Stunning Queen CEO. He has medical skills and can see through things, and he can treat illnesses and flirt with girls at the same time. But since he practiced the 9 souls technique, this perspective has caused Lin Hao a lot of trouble. What should he do? Chapter 1: The Worries of a Beautiful CEO. At 8 in the morning, during the peak hours of the workday, a red Cayenne added a splash of elegance to the otherwise chaotic atmosphere on the bustling highway. The driver was a beautiful woman, whose beauty was most striking in her slightly flushed, cherry red lips. The slightly upturned lips carried a playful, even seductive allure, and a casual pout could send one's imagination running wild. The red Cayenne made a turn and was about to enter the Huafeng Group. The woman behind the wheel was Bai Jingxue, the CEO of Huafeng Group, one of the most powerful clothing companies in Binan City, with brands that were best sellers both domestically and internationally. However, recent internal conflicts within the company had caused Bai Jingxue great concern. If these issues weren't resolved quickly, they would put her in a very disadvantageous position. Just as Bai Jingxue was about to pull over to the side to enter the company, a taxi suddenly overtook her from behind and parked directly in front of her red Cayenne. This enraged her. The anger erupted from deep within, to the point where her chest, slightly exposed, began to heave, as though 2 balloons had been squeezed from outside, causing every rise and fall to be strikingly seductive. Beep beep beep. Bai Jingxue slammed the horn in frustration, urging the taxi to move. A young man dressed in a dark blue suit stepped out of the taxi. He adjusted his suit with a gentlemanly gesture, then arrogantly brushed his hair back, turning and strolling toward the red Cayenne with a faint smile on his face. He looked exceptionally handsome and confident. This young man was Lin Hao, a newly hired English translator at Huafeng Group. At the age of 22, he was in the prime of his youth. "It's you, you Mauritian." Seeing him, Bai Jingxue's expression became extremely complex. She was already seething with anger, and now she could no longer hold it in. She pointed at him and snapped, "You freak from Mauritius. If you don't want to be fired, get out of my way." Lin Hao maintained his faint smile, which had an almost devilish charm. He wasn't bothered by her rude words. He slowly walked toward her car, leaned against the window, and placed one hand on the roof, tapping his fingers lightly while looking down at her. "Do you want to die or something?" Bai Jingxue glared at him. But as soon as she lifted her head, her body tilted back, and her half-exposed chest was almost fully revealed to Lin Hao's gaze. The black lingerie underneath and her pale, flawless skin seemed to shimmer with a provocative allure. Seeing such a stunning sight, Lin Hao's heart skipped a beat. This was an unexpected bonus. He couldn't help but mutter, "How magnificent! You exposed that to me on your own. I didn't do it on purpose." "What do you mean by that?" Bai Jingxue narrowed her eyes coldly, then immediately realized her situation. She quickly pulled her body back, tightening her shirt's collar, and scornfully cursed, "Pervert! Get back to work now, or I'll fire you immediately." Rather than leaving, Lin Hao circled around to the other side of the car. Before Bai Jingxue could react, he opened the car door and got in, still with that same smile. But to Bai Jingxue, that smile seemed incredibly irritating. "What are you doing in my car? Get out now!" she snapped. "CEO Bai, don't be so fierce. I want to eat you." Lin Hao continued to smile, then changed the subject. "I know you've been facing some troubles recently, and I can help you." "You can help me? With your Mauritius background?" Bai Jingxue looked at him skeptically. She couldn't imagine how someone like him could assist her. At best, he wouldn't cause her more trouble. Her distrust of Lin Hao had a reason. Half a month ago, when Lin Hao applied for the English translator position with his Mauritius University degree, he knew that this cursed degree would make him the laughingstock of the entire company. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. He quickly became a hot topic among the staff, but not in the way he hoped. "Do you know? We have someone from Mauritius University now." When someone started a conversation like that, the response was always, "Mauritius University? Who is that?" "The new English translator." "Does Mauritius even have a university?" Har har. When the interviewer first saw Lin Hao's diploma and listened to his responses, he couldn't help but find the situation both funny and absurd. However, due to his fluency in English, the interviewer was eventually persuaded and hired him, as there didn't seem to be any better English translator available at the time. Lin Hao knew she would react like this, but he didn't care. He spoke confidently, ever since your father, the former chairman, passed away, your position in the company has been unstable. This is your chance to turn things around. With Xiong Huaiho in Europe for an inspection, you have a lot of opportunities. Bai Jingxue originally wanted to kick him out of the car, but upon hearing his words, she couldn't help but show a hint of hope. She indeed needed a chance to turn the tide, and she needed it badly. However, she didn't know how to find or create that opportunity. But soon, her expression changed to disappointment as she said, "It's easier said than done. Although Xiong Huaiho is in Europe, the company's top management is all his people. What can I do?" "The so-called top management, anyone who doesn't listen will be fired," Lin Hao said firmly, then added with a knowing smile, "Just like how you wanted to fire me just now. Show that kind of determination." Bai Jingxue snorted and said, "Do you think it's that simple? They are company veterans. You think I can fire them just like that? There needs to be a good reason." "A reason? I'll give you one. Our first target is Xiong Huaiho's brother-in-law." Lin Hao finished, got out of the car, and without looking back, added, "The reason you wanted is already in your inbox, and I've outlined exactly what you need to do." "Crazy," Bai Jingxue muttered as she watched him walk away. She started the car and drove into the company, still glaring at him as she passed the gate. Lin Hao waved at her, flashing an ambiguous smile, and blew her a kiss. The two security guards at the gate were completely confused but then gave him a thumbs up. One of the guards even praised, "Buddy, you're brave. You dared to flirt with the CEO." "Not bad," Lin Hao smiled arrogantly and walked toward the office building. Bai Jingxue stepped out of her car, glared at him one more time, and then straightened her posture, walking elegantly into the building. But beneath her cold and elegant exterior, the worries in her heart remained. Although she was the CEO, she had no foundation in the company. When her father died in a car accident a month and a half ago, the second largest shareholder, Xiong Huaiho, had used a high-level vote to become chairman. Bai Jingxue retained her position as CEO, but her power had been almost entirely stripped away, and the only department she could still control was the translation team. At her most helpless, someone suddenly appeared offering to help her turn things around. Naturally, she felt some relief. But she was also aware that this person from Mauritius likely couldn't offer much help. She treated his offer lightly, dismissing it as empty words. If it weren't for her desperate need to cultivate someone loyal to her, she would have fired him for his disrespect. Yet, deep down, she also realized that, despite everything, he was at least on her side. The idea that someone was willing to stand with her gave her a glimmer of hope. At least he was confident that he could help. Chapter 2: The Strange Side Effects. Lin Hao arrived on the second floor, sat at his desk, and as usual, turned on his computer and checked his work email to see if there were any new messages. There were no new emails. He was free to waste the morning as usual. Sometimes, the work of a translator can be extremely busy, with hardly any time to blink. But once the rush is over, it's the kind of boredom that makes you wish you could do anything, even if it meant a little pain. These past few days, Lin Hao had been very bored, so much so that it felt almost painful. So, in a completely idle manner, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the CEO's office across from him. Although the door was closed, it didn't stop him from appreciating the beauty inside. To him, the walls and doors were like transparent glass. Bai Jingxue sat at her desk, her eyes fixed on the computer screen. From her focused demeanor, Lin Hao knew she was absorbed in the email he had sent. He could also be sure that she would accept his plan. Indeed, Bai Jingxue was impressed by his plan and even showed some appreciation. She hadn't expected the guy from Mauritius to understand the company so well in such a short time. He knew the relationships between the executives, their interests, and conflicts more clearly than she did. The plan he had laid out in the email was also thorough and well thought out. While she was carefully reading the email, her assistant came in with a cup of tea. The assistant saw her so focused and didn't want to disturb her, merely reminding her that the tea was hot before leaving. Bai Jingxue didn't pay much attention. Lost in concentration, she habitually picked up the cup and took a sip. The boiling tea burned her lips, making her yelp in pain. In her fluster, she couldn't hold the cup properly, and it dropped onto her lap. The hot tea soaked through her short skirt and even dampened her underwear. Damn it! Bai Jingxue cursed, her lips burning from the heat. She quickly stood up, patting the tea off her skirt. Luckily, it was winter. Though the weather in the south wasn't too cold, the hot water cooled quickly, so she didn't suffer burns on her pale thighs. Her skirt was wet and wouldn't dry anytime soon. If anyone saw her like this, they would surely laugh at her. Fortunately, she kept spare clothes in her office for just such occasions. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and drew the curtains. Then she started to undress first her jacket, then her shirt, and even her underwear. Her upper body was completely exposed, and all of it was visible to Lin Hao. His heart raced, and his body temperature spiked. Oh my God! Lin Hao prided himself on having seen countless beautiful women, many with great figures. But a body like by Jingshue's this fiery hot was something he had never seen before. Her slender waist was so tight it looked delicate, with not a trace of excess fat. Her smooth, flat belly rose and fell gently, almost as if it had some magical pull, drawing his eyes to her, making him unable to look away. What happened next was even more stimulating. Bai Jingxue took off her skirt, her stockings, and even her panties. She stood there, completely naked, in full view of Lin Hao. He was overwhelmed by a surge of heat and restlessness, his internal energy vibrating violently, causing his body to tremble. He quickly looked away, trying to regain his composure. However, the energy still raged inside him, and his meridians were being relentlessly impacted. He tried to suppress it, but it was impossible. The energy was too powerful. The sensation was excruciating. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought to control it. Damn it, I shouldn't have practiced that damn 9 souls technique. The 9 souls technique, while incredibly powerful, was a sinister method of absorbing yin energy to replenish yang. He had been practicing the 9 souls technique in hopes of rapidly increasing his energy. He thought he could overcome its side effects, but after more than a year of trying, he still had found a way to eliminate them. The 9 souls technique had 9 levels. The first 3 levels could increase energy without needing to absorb yin energy. However, once you broke through the 3rd level, you had to absorb yin energy to counterbalance the overwhelming power of the technique, or else your meridians would be torn apart, and you would die. Lin Hao had known about these side effects, so he had stopped practicing the 9 souls technique after breaking through the 3rd level. But the manual didn't mention that simply seeing a woman's body could trigger a chaotic surge in his internal energy. If he didn't absorb yin energy soon, the consequences would be dire. The last time he experienced this side effect was 6 months ago. It was when Mo Shang, that vixen, seduced him. He had no choice but to kiss her and absorb her yin energy to calm the raging energy inside him. That's when he realized that just seeing a woman's body could make his internal energy run wild. So what was he supposed to do now? He couldn't just grab any woman and force her into a situation like that, especially not in the company. Plus, he wasn't the type of person to behave like an animal. Lin Hao, why aren't you working? What are you doing, bored? Suddenly, a harsh, unfriendly voice broke his concentration. A fat man was staring directly at him. The fat man was Wei Chang'an, the human resources manager, and the brother-in-law of the chairman. Lin Hao glanced at him and tried to calm himself. Struggling to suppress his raging energy, he gritted his teeth and said, "I've finished all my tasks. If you have nothing better to do, don't shout in front of me. There will be consequences if you keep it up." What else with that attitude? The documents I gave you yesterday, have you translated them yet? Wei Chang'an's face grew even fatter with anger as he glared at Lin Hao. If it weren't for Lin Hao's flawless translations, he would have fired him on the spot. I finished them in less than an hour. I sent them to your email yesterday afternoon. You didn't check. Looks like you're even more bored than I am. Maybe you were too busy hugging your secretary to check your inbox? Lin Hao's words were laced with sarcasm, hinting at a veiled threat. What did you say? Wei Chang'an stammered, his face turning pale with fear. He pointed at Lin Hao and snapped, "Sit up properly. If you're so free, sort out the documents for the second half of the year. Translate everything that needs translating. Sorting documents is your secretary's job. I'm not going to do her work for free. If you want me to, your secretary will have to pay me extra." Lin Hao sneered, clearly uninterested in treating his manager with any respect. The translation department in the company was somewhat awkward. It had only been established after the company opened up to international markets. They couldn't justify having a whole department just for a few translators, so the department was directly under the CEO's supervision. But to completely undermine Bai Jingshue's power, Xiong Huaiho, the second largest shareholder, had taken control of the translation department half a month ago, though in name it was still under Bai Jingxue. Lin Hao's words infuriated Wei Chang'an even more. He shouted, "You, a graduate from some useless university in Mauritius, dare to act arrogant in front of me? Do you think I can't fire you? There are plenty of translators better than you. Get out now. What's wrong with Mauritius? As long as I mastered my profession, I'm better than you. Your words stink worse than dog shit, and even the natives of Mauritius are more cultured than you." Lin Hao retorted, his words hitting Wei Chang'an right where it hurt. Chapter 3, The Unusual Bet. After being ridiculed by Lin Hao, Wei Chang'an was immediately enraged and shouted at him, "You're fired. Get the hell out of here, right now. I'm sorry, our translation team is directly managed by President Bai. Only she has the authority to fire me. You get out of my face and stop speaking to me with that filthy mouth," Lin Hao replied disdainfully, showing no respect for him as a manager. The colleagues in the office watched the confrontation with mixed emotions. They were anxious for Lin Hao but also felt exhilarated. Wei Chang'an was notorious for bullying them, so seeing someone stand up to him was oddly satisfying. No matter what, it feels good to see that fat bastard get scolded, one of them thought. You just wait. I'll call President Bai out here right now. Wei Chang'an snarled, glaring at Lin Hao with pure malice. No need to call her. President Bai is about to come out, Lin Hao said with a smirk. But I think she'll likely fire you, not me. Are you crazy? How would President Bai fire me? Wei Chang'an sneered, finding the idea laughable. He was the chairman's brother-in-law, so there was no way Bai Jingxue would ever fire him. How about we make a bet? Lin Hao turned to look at his colleagues, who were now intrigued but also a bit confused. I bet President Bai will come out and fire you, and before you leave the company, you will have to apologize to everyone for the trouble you've caused them. The colleagues looked on, uncertain at first, but deep down, they hoped it would be Wei Chang'an getting fired and even more so, that he de-apologize, preferably on his knees. Bet? Fine, but if you lose, what will you do? Wei Chang'an smirked, confident he'd win the bet. I'll do whatever you want if I lose, but on one condition: you must kneel and apologize to everyone if you lose, Lin Hao said with a grin. Alright, you better not back out when the time comes. You'll be kneeling and licking my shoes if I win. Wei Chang'an agreed without a second thought, sure that he would win. He immediately turned to knock on the door. Just then, the door opened, and Bai Jingxue appeared at the threshold. Her almond-shaped eyes gleamed with a cold light as she fixed Wei Chang'an with a fierce stare and scolded, "What's all this noise? Don't you people have work to do? Are we running a market here?" Wei Chang'an froze, stunned by her icy glare. He quickly explained, "President Bai, it's not me causing trouble, it's this lazy bastard here. I told him off for slacking, and he dared to insult me. Someone like him should be fired immediately. You're the one making the most noise right now. As a manager, you should be maintaining order, not instigating arguments with your subordinates. How are you even fit to be a manager?" Bai Jingxue's voice was even harsher now, and she added, "If you don't want to work, pack your things and leave. You've got to be kidding me. He started the fight, and now you're going to fire me." Wei Chang'an was stunned. How could she possibly want to fire him? Didn't she know the chairman was his brother-in-law? You dared to speak to me in that tone? Are you challenging my authority as CEO? Bai Jingxue's gaze intensified, her tone leaving no room for argument. You're fired. Pack your things and leave immediately. What the hell, Bai? Wei Chang'an's voice rose as he fumed. You don't have the right to fire me. What reason do you have to fire me? My brother-in-law is the chairman. If anyone's going to fire me, it will be him, not you. I'm the CEO of this company, and I'm also its largest shareholder. Just for speaking to me in such a tone, I have every right to fire you, Bai Jingxue replied firmly. She pulled out her phone, opened her email, and played a video. Since you want a reason, I'll give you one. The video opened, and the sounds of a woman's moans and a man's excited shouts echoed through the room. It was immediately clear to everyone that the man's voice was Wei Chang'an's. Only someone of his size could make such sounds. Bai Jingxue held the phone up in front of everyone, then pointed it directly at Wei Chang'an's miserable, fat face, and said with a piercing gaze, "This was filmed during working hours. You and your secretary engaged in inappropriate conduct in the office. I don't need people like you in my company. You're fired, and so is your secretary. Get out now. Wei Chang'an stood frozen, utterly dumbfounded. His secretary, standing beside him, blushed deeply, not daring to say a word, looking like a criminal awaiting judgment, silently hoping for Wei Chang'an to save her. After a moment of shock, Wei Chang'an snapped and screamed at Bai Jingxue, "You bitch! How dare you install a camera in my office? You're violating my privacy. I'm suing you. You have the nerve to accuse me of that after what you've done." Bai Jingshue's voice was unyielding. "I didn't install any cameras. You're the one who got caught, so if you want to sue me, go ahead. But I'm telling you now, I didn't install anything in your office." "Then how do you explain this video?" Wei Chang'an questioned, reaching for her phone. Lin Hao quickly grabbed his wrist and countered, "Why don't you ask yourself? You guys were messing around, and someone recorded it. With so many hackers out there, it's easy for videos to get leaked. You probably stored it on your phone, and some hacker snatched it and posted it online. It's not that surprising. Now, President Bai saw it. Simple as that. You? How do you know the video was taken by me?" Wei Chang'an stuttered, suddenly feeling guilty but trying to hide it. Lin Hao shrugged nonchalantly, "I'm just guessing. It happens all the time. Remember the scandal with that Chen guy a few years ago? Same situation." Lin Hao's casual demeanor contrasted with the tension in the room, and he had actually hacked into Wei Chang'an's phone to retrieve the videos. "Wei Chang'an, you've been conspiring with your secretary to frame me. If you want to go down this path, don't blame me for being ruthless. When my brother-in-law comes back, you'll regret this. I'll be back soon and you'll get what's coming to you," Wei Chang'an raged as he glared at them. But Lin Hao didn't let go of his wrist. With a sly grin, he said, "Leaving so soon? What do you want now?" Wei Chang'an sneered. "You forgot our bet," Lin Hao said, coldly mocking him. "You still owe everyone an apology. And I think you know what kind of apology I mean, on your knees." The colleagues watched, grinning with excitement, eager for the moment of reckoning. They were all looking forward to seeing Wei Chang'an get his comeuppance. Chapter 4. Let us talk about it in the office. Wei Chang'an, of course, refused to apologize, and said angrily, "Why should I apologize? If you don't want to die, let me go." Lin Hao replied sternly, "Admit defeat. No one who dares to admit defeat in front of me has appeared yet. I just refuse to admit defeat, what can you do?" Wei Chang'an's face turned cold and his attitude became even more arrogant. "It's nothing, just some physical pain." Lin Hao smiled and suddenly exerted force with his hand, squeezing the fat man's wrist, causing a crackling sound. The sound made everyone's scalp tingle and they felt as if their bones were about to be broken. "R." Wei Chang'an screamed, his left hand was powerless for a moment, he grimaced in pain, and suddenly swung his right fist towards Lin Hao's forehead, cursing, "If you go against me, I will beat you to death, you bastard." Lin Hao didn't move at all, still with a smile on his face. Seeing him motionless, everyone was shocked, thinking that he was scared silly. They immediately held their breath, waiting for him to be knocked down by the fat man's punch. Crack, crack. Suddenly, there were several crisp sounds of bones cracking, and everyone was stunned, thinking that Lin Hao's skull was cracked. But the next second, everyone heard Wei Chang'an's painful roar again, this time it was even more shrill, like the roar of a pig being slaughtered. My hand is broken, R." All the joints in Wei Chang'an's right hand were dislocated and his whole arm was shaking with pain. "Kneel down and apologize." Lin Hao shouted coldly, his eyes became extremely cold, completely different from his previous smile. Wei Chang'an was extremely angry and glared at him, "I won't apologize, let's see what you can do to me. I didn't expect that a fat, smelly guy like you still had some backbone. Congratulations, you have successfully aroused my desire to conquer you." Lin Hao smiled sarcastically again, twisted his hand inward, and pushed it upward. After a few clicks, the joint was connected. However, there were several crisp cracking sounds of bones soon after, and the joints were dislocated again. It was twisted and reconnected over and over again, and all people heard was a series of clicking sounds and the fat man's screams. The fat man's forehead was sweating from the pain, his fat face was distorted, and in the end he could only beg for mercy honestly, "Brother, please stop, I apologize, please stop." "Kneel down," Lin Hao ordered sternly. Wei Chang'an knelt down with a thud. This time he didn't even have the consciousness to resist. He kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I have done many things that let you down in the past. Please forgive me. No one responded to him, but everyone showed joy on their faces. They didn't have any sympathy for the fat man in front of them. The bastard deserved it because he was always domineering and bullying. Lin Hao chuckled, if you had done this earlier, everything would have been fine. Wei Chang'an raised his head and pleaded timidly, brother, I know I was wrong. Please help me connect my hand. It really hurts. Okay, I'll help you connect your hand. Lin Hao replied slowly, grabbed his right hand again, connected his joint, patted his shoulder, and reminded him, behave yourself in the future, don't cause trouble for me, otherwise you will bear the consequences. Do you understand what I mean? I understand. Wei Chang'an nodded repeatedly, as honest as a pug. You can go now. Lin Hao waved his hands as if he was sending away a dog. Wei Chang'an crawled towards the elevator as if he had been pardoned, and his secretary followed him into the elevator, covered in dust. As soon as the elevator door closed, the secretary asked tentatively, are we just going to let it go like this? Forget it, I'm going to kill that bastard. And that bitch by Jingxue, if she dares to fire me, I'll show you how I'll deal with her. Wei Chang'an bared his teeth, extremely angry, with a ferocious expression on his face. His hatred for Lin Hao had already aroused his murderous intent. After such a torment, the already irritable Yuanli in Lin Hao's body became even more agitated. It was no use forcing it down, which made him extremely painful, but he could only endure the severe pain. But no matter how strong his endurance was, a person's endurance had its limits. This made him start to sweat all over his body and his consciousness gradually became blurred. Bai Jingxue seemed to have noticed something was wrong. She glanced at everyone and said, okay, stop gathering here and go back to work. Everyone then dispersed and returned to their respective posts. Are you okay? Bai Jingxue looked at Lin Hao and asked. It was not difficult to hear the concern in her tone. No matter what, he helped her a lot today. And she also saw that this guy had some skills. First, go into the office first. Lin Hao's speech was a little slow, and his brows were furrowed in pain. Seeing him in so much pain, Bai Jingxue had no choice but to invite him into the office and asked with concern, are you feeling unwell? Do you want to call an ambulance? No, no need. Lin Hao tried hard to keep himself awake, closed the door and locked it. His action immediately made Bai Jingxue particularly nervous, and she asked, why did you lock the door? Listen to me. Lin Hao didn't know how to explain to her, so he grabbed her shoulders with both hands and looked at her seriously. I don't know how to explain to you now, but I will be responsible for you. If you don't need me to be responsible, you can do whatever you want later, but now. Now, what do you want to do? Bai Jingxue became even more nervous. She pried his hands apart and pushed him hard, let me go. If you don't, I'll call for help. Don't think you can be rude to me just because you helped me. Before she finished speaking, Lin Hao kissed her mouth. Fearing that she would break free, he hugged her tightly, holding her tightly as if she were his own child. He hugged her tightly and kissed her hard, and her breathing suddenly became rapid. You rascal, you stinking rascal, let me go, Bai Jingxue pushed hard but couldn't push him away. Her mouth was kissed so hard by him that her entire mouth was covered by his, which made it difficult for her to speak clearly or scream out loudly. In the end, she could only make a whimpering sound. What made her even more ashamed was that her tongue actually stuck in. Asshole, I'm going to kill you. If you don't let me go, I'll sue you for rape. Bai Jingxue was filled with shame and tried to push him away with all her strength, but it was no use. After just a moment, her consciousness became blurry. Then, she entered a state of ecstasy. The feeling intoxicated her. She felt as if she was floating in a sea of clouds, her body light and dreamy. There seemed to be a strange warmth flowing through her meridians. This feeling was so real, so comfortable and stimulating that she couldn't stop. Chapter 5, Actually, you feel the same way. Soon, Bai Jingxue fell silent, murmuring sounds, and became active. Because of excitement, she hugged Lin Hao tightly with both hands and even couldn't help tearing his clothes. A trace of Yuan Yin Qi continuously flowed from her body into Lin Hao's body, converging from the 8 extraordinary meridians to the Dantian. With the neutralization of the Yuan Yin Qi, the violent Yuan Li gradually subsided. After more than 10 minutes, Lin Hao returned to normal and his disordered breathing subsided. At this time, they were already lying on the sofa, hugging each other tightly. What surprised and excited him even more was the soft and full feeling in his hands, which was clearly the touch of the beautiful woman's breasts. Lin Hao felt a little worried. He had taken such a big advantage, but there was a good chance that he would be hacked to death by her. He better retreat quickly. But it seems irresponsible to just withdraw like this. It is not right to withdraw, and it is not right not to withdraw. When he was struggling, Bai Jingxue opened her eyes. Her face was slightly red, and she seemed to be still immersed in the pleasant stimulation, and her spirit had not fully recovered. But she had regained consciousness and knew what had just happened. What made her even more disgusted was that she felt her breasts being pressed hard by a dirty hand. "Get out of here, you bastard!" Bai Jingxue suddenly roared in anger, her eyes were red and filled with flames of anger. The heat seemed to be able to turn the stinking hooligan in front of her into ashes. But this bastard had a smirk on his face, and sat up with a look of unsatisfied desire. When his fingers left Xiufeng, he pinched her twice without noticing, took a breath and said, "The elasticity is really good. Go to hell, you filthy bastard." Bai Jingxue was so angry that she kicked him several times, and still said, "Get out of here. If you don't leave, I will call the police." "Why are you so angry? Aren't you feeling pretty good too?" Lin Hao said this out of the blue, looking at her with an evil expression, one hand patting his thigh which was a little painful from her kick, and the other hand inadvertently grabbing the panties she had changed before. "Fuck you, get out of here." Bai Jingxue's face turned red with anger. She had no place to vent her anger, so she kicked him a few more times and grabbed the teacup on the coffee table and wanted to hit him. He didn't care about her anger, he picked up the lace panties, waved them in front of his eyes, and asked curiously, "Is this yours? Is it still yours?" Bai Jingxue screamed. "Hey, why is it so wet?" Lin Hao asked knowingly and sniffed it. His expression immediately became very meaningful. "Oh, I see. It's a large amount. Pervert, what are you thinking, you stinky rascal, I just poured tea on myself." Bai Jingxue bit her teeth in anger, raised her teacup and smashed it on his head. "Go to hell, you pervert." Lin Hao grabbed her hand, looked at her seriously, and said sincerely, "Okay, I was wrong. The kiss just now was not my intention. I didn't want to take advantage of you, but I had to do it. If you think beating me up can vent your anger, then go ahead." He then slowly released her hand, closed his eyes, and waited for her punishment. Seeing his expression, Bai Jingxue hesitated and never smashed the teacup she had raised high. She thought that maybe he really had no choice. Thinking of his painful expression just now, and then thinking about how she was immersed in the light-hearted scene after being kissed by her, she seemed to understand something and slowly let go of her hand. The death penalty can be avoided, but the living crime cannot be forgiven. Bai Jingxue said angrily. She felt that this guy had some ability, and she could use this to threaten him and make him listen to her. "What kind of punishment will I have to endure?" Lin Hao opened his eyes and asked with a smile. "Don't give me a playful smile." Bai Jingxue looked at him seriously and said, "If you want me to forgive you, you must listen to me in the future. If you dare not listen, I will call the police and accuse you of rape. It's not impossible for me to listen to you, but it depends on what it is. I won't do anything that violates the law or principles." Lin Hao also replied seriously. He was still a little happy in his heart. This trick really worked when dealing with women. Instead of confronting them head-on, it would be better to be tolerant. Maybe there would be a way out. "You dare to put forward conditions." Bai Jingxue rolled her eyes, but then said, "Don't worry, I won't let you do anything illegal. In short, you just listen to me honestly in the future, and I won't treat you unfairly." "That's fine." Lin Hao shrugged, stood up and said, "Nothing else, I'll go out first." Bai Jingxue quickly shouted, "Wait. Is there anything else? Do you want to be intimate again?" Lin Hao said with a playful smile. "Go to hell, be serious." Bai Jingxue pointed at his mouth with a serious face and said, "Wipe the lipstick marks off your mouth before you leave." Lin Hao smiled softly, leaned over to get a tissue from the coffee table, wiped the lipstick marks on his lips, threw the tissue into the trash can, and said half-jokingly, "It actually feels pretty good, right? If you dare to talk nonsense again, believe it or not, I will call the police right now." Bai Jingxue picked up the phone and threatened him. After thinking for a while, she added, I warn you, don't tell anyone about this. If anyone knows about this, I will definitely kill you. Understood, this is a secret between us, I won't tell anyone. Lin Hao answered with amusement, tidied up his messy clothes and hair, turned around and walked towards the door. Bai Jingxue glared at him angrily and said, come with me to the meeting later. Okay. Lin Hao answered casually and left the office, closing the door gently and glancing around the office area. Colleagues were still busy with their own work, unaware of what was happening in their office. Shortly afterwards, Bai Jingxue came out of the office with a stack of freshly printed documents and winked at Lin Hao, indicating that he should go to the meeting with her. Just now, she had asked her assistant Xu Wen to notify all executives to go to the conference room for a meeting. Xu Wen and other executives were already waiting in the conference room. When colleagues saw Lin Hao following the president towards the conference room, they began to speculate that he might be promoted. He had just driven Wei Chang'an away for the president, so the president would definitely promote him. The conference room was located in the innermost area of the second floor. More than a dozen executives were waiting for the president's arrival in the conference room. Many of them roughly guessed what Bai Jingxue was going to say. Even the chairman's brother-in-law Wei Chang'an was fired. This is clearly an attempt to exclude dissidents. Who will be fired next? However, these executives are not worried. Many of them are veterans of the company, and there must be a valid reason to fire them. Chapter 6. You are like ants in front of me. When Bai Jingxue appeared at the door of the conference room, what surprised these executives was that there was a sunny and handsome young man following her. This young man was the new English translator from Mauritius. In addition to the company's senior executives, there was another person with a special identity. He was Bai Jingxue's uncle, Bai Chutang, who was in his 50s, wore glasses, and looked a little deep. Bai Chutang owns 15% of the shares. In the past, because of Bai Jingxue's father, Bai Chutang had no status in the company. His son Bai Haifeng also held a syndicate in the company and lived a lazy life every day. This father and son seldom came to the company twice a month before. Since Bai Jingxue's father passed away, they seemed like different people, especially Bai Chutang, who actually came to work on time. Although he only held the syndicate position of planning manager, the deputy manager was the one who was really in charge of the planning department. Bai Chutang knew nothing, but at least he went to work every day in an orderly manner. Just 20 days ago, when the company was re-electing its chairman, Bai Chutang and Bai Haifeng did not support Bai Jingxue. Instead, they voted for Xiong Huaiho, resulting in Xiong Huaiho being passed unanimously. This made Bai Jingxue extremely embarrassed and caused her to lose a lot of power. She originally thought that at least her uncle would support her. Even if she lost the election, as long as she was the major shareholder, the position of chairman would not be taken away by others. What surprised her was that Bai Chutang openly stood on Xiong Huaiho's side. The two of them held 55% of the shares, so they had the power to choose who would be the chairman. Bai Jingxue naturally understood what Bai Chutang and his son were thinking. They wanted to use Xiong Huaiho to suppress her and squeeze her out of the company step by step so that they could take the position themselves. Otherwise, they would not have come to work so diligently in the company in the past month. Lin Hao walked to the main seat of the conference table with Bai Jingxue. Before they sat down, Bai Chutang stood up and accused them, "This is a high-level meeting. Why did you bring him here? He is already a senior executive in the company, so it is natural for him to come." Bai Jingxue did not hesitate to announce, "Wei Chang'an has been fired because of his work-style problems. I now officially announce that Lin Hao will be promoted to the position of Human Resources Manager." Bai Chutang immediately retorted, "He is a newcomer and just a translator. How can he be qualified to be a manager? It's my power as the president to appoint someone as manager. You don't have to tell me what to do. I'd like to ask you what your purpose is in talking about me." Bai Jingxue responded sharply and did not take her uncle seriously at all. Since he was unkind, she would not have any respect for him. "You are so bad, Bai Jingxue. I am your uncle. How can you talk to your elders like that?" Bai Chutang pointed at her angrily with a frown on his face. "You also know that you are Mr. Bai's uncle." Before Bai Jingxue could answer, Lin Hao, who had been silent, suddenly shouted in a deep voice, asking him in a scorching tone, "As an elder, you didn't help Ms. Bai when she was isolated and helpless, but instead helped outsiders to deal with your niece. Is this what you should do as an elder? You are so unkind and shameless. You ignore your relatives for your own selfish interests. What's the difference between you and animals? Every word Lin Hao said was like a pearl of wisdom, and each word was like 1,000 pounds of weight that hit Bai Chutan's heart so hard that he couldn't respond. Bai Haifeng stood up angrily, walked over aggressively, and shouted, "Who the hell do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to talk nonsense here?" Bai Haifeng walked up to him, pointed at his nose and cursed, "You freak from Mauritius, get out of here. Keep your mouth clean." Lin Hao grabbed his fingers, twisted them hard, and pressed them down. Bai Haifeng's fingers suddenly felt pain, and at the same time a huge force pressed down on him. His legs bent down uncontrollably, and then he knelt on the ground, howling, "Ouch, fuck your mother, let me go, or I'll kill you. Destroy me, all right. In that case, I'll destroy you first." Lin Hao slowly bent his fingers toward the back of his hand, and soon his fingers became deformed and the pain was unbearable. Let go of me now, my hand is going to break." Bai Haifeng shouted in pain, pulling the corner of his mouth. "Why should I let go? Will letting you go ruin me?" Lin Hao asked him back with a smile on his face, and the smile became more and more evil, making people tremble with fear. As he continued to increase his strength, Bai Haifeng's fingers had been bent to the limit and would break with just a little more force. This kind of pain was the limit of what Bai Haifeng could endure. He could only beg for mercy. I was wrong, please spare me." Lin Hao did not let go immediately. He looked up at everyone and finally took a look at Bai Chutan. He said pointedly, "I am only here for a meeting today, not to cause trouble. If anyone is upset with me and wants to cause trouble, I will fight to the end. No matter who you are or how much capital you have, you are all like ants in front of me." Of course Bai Chutan could tell that his words were directed at him, but for the sake of his son's safety, he could only swallow his anger for the time being. The others looked at each other and whispered. They didn't expect that this guy from Mauritius would be so arrogant. He even wanted to beat the shareholder's son and dared to threaten the shareholder directly. This is exactly the effect Lin Hao wanted. This commotion was meant to serve as a warning to these so-called executives. Let's see who dares to say anything to him or make decisions. He let go of Bai Haifeng, patted him on the face twice, and said, "If you want to live a peaceful life, you'd better not cause trouble for me, otherwise you will bear the consequences. Do you understand?" "Understood." Bai Haifeng could only nod obediently, but he already had murderous intentions in his heart. After suffering such an insult today, he would not be Bai Haifeng if he did not take revenge. "Now get back to your seat." Lin Hao glared at him, and Bai Haifeng had no choice but to lower his head and return to his seat. He lowered his head and rubbed his fingers in shame, not daring to say another word. He was too embarrassed to speak. Bai Jingxue looked at Lin Hao with a hint of appreciation in her eyes, then looked at Assistant Xu Wen and said, "Show the documents to the managers and supervisors of the finance department and the purchasing department." "Yes, President." Xu Wen nodded in understanding and sent the document to the manager and deputy manager of the finance department and the purchasing department, as well as 2 supervisors. When they saw these documents, their faces changed. They were full of evidence and information about their collusion to embezzle money from the company. It even clearly stated who they met, where they went, and what they talked about. Chapter 7: Play a Game. Several executives looked at these documents and felt uneasy, especially the 2 supervisors, whose hands were shaking. They were not like those managers. They were not company veterans. It would only take a few minutes to fire them, and they might even face lawsuits for this. After reading these documents, do you have anything to say? Bai Jingxue frowned and asked several senior executives from the finance and purchasing departments. Several people looked at each other, and finally looked at Manager Liao from the finance department. He had the longest seniority, at 50 years old, and had been there when the company was founded. With such qualifications, Manager Liao could definitely take advantage of his seniority. He also thought so. He pretended to be calm, pushed his glasses and said, "Boss Bai, these materials you have do not conform to the facts and have no basis at all. We have photos as evidence. It's clear who you met with and what you said. What else do you need?" Bai Jingxue looked at them coldly, seeing through these so-called company veterans. Photoshop technology is so advanced now. Mr. Bai, you can't use such despicable means to eliminate dissidents. We are all veterans of the company. Even if we have no merits, we have worked hard. You can't treat us like this. Manager Liao has taken advantage of his seniority to the extreme, and he knows very well that this is the weight that will help him turn defeat into victory. Sure enough, others followed suit. Yes, Mr. Bai, we have worked hard for the company for more than 10 years. You can't do this. It will make everyone feel disappointed. Now you are the ones who make me feel cold. Bai Jingxue glared at everyone, picked up her phone, opened another video in her mailbox, put it on the conference table, pushed it in front of Manager Liao, and said, "The evidence is irrefutable, and you still want to quibble. Pictures can be photoshopped, but videos cannot be photoshopped. Everyone can take a look and listen to what they said. Although the video is only more than 10 minutes long, what the people in it say is enough to send them to jail." The manager and deputy manager of the finance and purchasing departments, as well as the two supervisors, were present, as well as the bosses of two suppliers. The subject of discussion was mostly about prices and kickbacks. They conspired with suppliers to deliberately inflate prices, and the suppliers then gave corresponding kickbacks to these managers and supervisors. After seeing this video, they were speechless, and the two supervisors were so scared that their faces turned pale. Several managers were also stunned. Manager Liao got angry and said, "You actually sent someone to monitor us. You are invading our privacy. People like you are the ones who complain first." Lin Hao didn't want to interrupt, but he really couldn't stand it anymore. How could this old guy be so shameless? The facts were right in front of him, but he still wanted to turn the tables. He pointed at Manager Liao and said, "You are so shameless and take advantage of your seniority. People like you can only become parasites of the company. You still have the nerve to keep saying that you have made contributions to the company at least. People like you will only harm the company." Manager Liao blushed and said angrily, "You bastard from Mauritius, you have no right to give orders here. Get out. You old fellow, you are so thick-skinned that I am really impressed by you." Lin Hao then revealed a wicked smile and walked towards the old guy. Bai Jingxue saw the evil smile on his face. She had seen this smile more than once today. It seemed that every time he smiled like this, someone would be in trouble. When Manager Liao saw his smile, he couldn't help but feel nervous and said timidly, "What do you want to do? Don't mess around, or I'll call the police." "No need to bother you, the police should be here soon, but before they get here, I'll play a game with you." After Lin Hao finished speaking, he pressed 2 acupuncture points on the old man's chest and the Chihai point on his abdomen, and said, "Let's see how long you can hold on." Manager Liao was stunned for a moment, not knowing what he meant. But after just a moment, he felt waves of sharp pain surging throughout his body, as if countless sharp knives were stirring in his body. R. This pain came without any reason, but it made his whole body tremble. He fell to the ground and screamed. The sound was even more tragic than slaughtering a pig. The roar made people's scalps numb. "What the fuck did you do to me? It hurts. It hurts so much. It hurts so much." Manager Liao covered his stomach with both hands. It was an instinctive reaction, but it wasn't just his stomach that hurt. His whole body was in pain and he was sweating all over. Lin Hao lowered his head and looked at him, and said slowly, "I didn't do anything. I said I was just playing a game with you. How do you feel?" The others couldn't help but sigh. They just saw him tapping Manager Liao a few times, and then he fell to the ground and started wailing. Who is this person? This created an invisible pressure in their hearts, making them realize that they must not go against him, otherwise they would end up in trouble. Manager Liao couldn't stand the pain anymore, so he grabbed his feet and begged, "Please let me go, I really can't stand it anymore. It's only been 10 seconds and you can't stand it anymore. This is the lowest record. Give me some face and at least hold on for a minute." Lin Hao deliberately delayed time. He wanted to torture the old guy and let him know that he had offended someone he could not afford to offend, and also let others understand the consequences of offending themselves. "Please, I really can't stand it anymore. As long as you let me go, I will do anything you want." Manager Liao really couldn't bear it anymore. He didn't want to hold on for even a second, let alone a minute. This kind of pain was something that a shameless and spineless person like him could endure. Lin Hao chuckled, bent down and pressed the phone kai point on his neck, relieving his pain, and said, "Are you still relying on your age? Are you still trying to make excuses?" "No, I don't dare." Manager Liao replied weakly. Although the pain was relieved, he still felt a lingering fear from the pain just now. Lin Hao turned around and looked at the others, and asked in a deep voice, "What about you guys? The other people lowered their heads and dared not speak. Lin Hao raised his voice and said, "Answer me, do you admit your guilt?" "Recognize, recognize, recognize." Several people nodded in agreement and answered. Lin Hao nodded in satisfaction. "That's right, when we get to the police station, you must confess your crime and don't let me do anything, otherwise you know what will happen to you." As soon as he finished speaking, someone knocked on the door and Xu Wen hurried to open it. A clerk led several policemen to the door and said, "President, they said you were the one who reported the case." "Right." Bai Jingxue nodded and said to the police, "Comrade police, they are the ones who took advantage of their positions to embezzle the company's money." The leading captain ordered his men to handcuff manager Liao and others and took away the documents. Bai Jingxue also transferred the video to the police's mobile phone. The police took the man away first, and asked Bai Jingxue to go to the police station to file a record and make a statement after she finished dealing with the company's affairs. Chapter 8. Beautiful women are always suspicious. After the police took the people away, Bai Jingxue looked at everyone solemnly and said, "Don't think you are innocent. I know exactly what you did. I'm letting you go today. I hope you will take care of yourself in the future and don't do anything that harms the interests of the company. Otherwise, you will be the next one to be taken away by the police." "No, no, we will listen to Mr. Bai from now on. Now, these people are much more honest. They know exactly what they have done. They have all abused their power for personal gain to one degree or another. If they are really held accountable one by one, none of them can escape." After this incident, they dared not disobey Bai Jingxue. They had reason to believe that she had enough evidence in her hands to send them all to prison. Bai Jingxue announced solemnly, "Now I declare that I will temporarily serve as the manager of the finance department, and Assistant Xu will serve as the manager of the purchasing department. We will make separate arrangements after recruiting a new manager. The positions in other departments will remain unchanged for the time being." No one dared to express their opinions casually, so they just accepted it. Bai Jingxue was quite satisfied with this result. She said, "If there is nothing else, adjourn the meeting. Everyone should sort out their own departments. Do not abuse power for personal gain in the future. If anyone dares to do it again, we will not let them off easily. Manager Liao and his colleagues are your role models." Everyone nodded frequently and left the office. Now they all sided with Bai Jingxue and dared not go against her anymore. Bai Qiutang could only shake his head helplessly and leave. Bai Haifeng walked in the back, turned around and glared at Lin Hao fiercely, raised his middle finger at him and said, "Wait for it, kid. You'll see what happens to you. Idiot." Lin Hao sneered and didn't bother to pay attention to him. He didn't take this kind of second-generation rich kid seriously at all, and he didn't think he could accomplish anything. Bai Jingxue glanced at him and said, "Come back to the office with me." "Okay." Lin Hao readily agreed and put his arm around her slender waist. "You rascal, stay away from me and don't touch me." Bai Jingxue quickly opened his hand and took a glance. Xu Wen followed them and couldn't help laughing, wondering what their relationship was. They entered the office, but Xu Wen did not follow them in. She seemed to understand something and didn't want to go in and disturb them. Lin Hao closed the door with his foot and shrugged proudly. "I was right, wasn't I? I can help you, and everything is in my plan." He wrote down in the email exactly what they had done, including calling the police. Before their meeting, Bai Jingxue called the police as planned. The timing was just right, and it seemed that everything was going according to plan. Bai Jingxue really admired him for his flawless plan, but she was also very curious and asked, "How did you get those videos and files?" "To be honest, I used to be a detective. This is a piece of cake for me. I've been keeping an eye on them for a long time." Lin Hao replied without any concealment, but his words were completely a cover-up, a concealment of his identity. He was not a detective, but it was indeed easy for him to obtain these evidences. "You've only been in the company for half a month. Why are you helping me like this? And a lot of that information and video happened half a month ago. Did you start investigating before you came to the company?" Bai Jingxue asked this not only out of curiosity, but more out of suspicion. She always felt that his motives were not pure. She was a businessman and believed in one iron rule: no one would work for you for free, and no one would help you for no reason. "It's simple, because I want to be promoted. As the saying goes, opportunities come to those who are prepared. I investigated these things before coming to the company, naturally in order to find a suitable opportunity to show my abilities in front of you. Lin Hao smiled calmly and shrugged confidently. Obviously, I did it, and you did it too. Your explanation is ambiguous and fails to convince me. What is your purpose? Bai Jingxue looked at him suspiciously. Sure enough, beautiful women are all very suspicious. Lin Hao exhaled, sat down on the sofa, and said, no matter what my purpose is, I won't hurt you. If I want to hurt you, I won't help you. I can help you regain control of the company. Isn't that enough for you? Why bother about my purpose? He paused, then continued, once you have consolidated your position in the company and eliminated all your opponents, I will leave. At that time, we will not interfere with each other. You will still be the high and mighty CEO, and I. How are you? Bai Jingxue seemed to hear a hint of helplessness in his words. Lin Hao glanced at her and laughed at himself. Let's not talk about me anymore. By then you shouldn't care about a gangster like me. When I leave, you shouldn't forget me for long. I hope you can keep your word and not stay in the company. Bai Jingxue curled her lips, but she felt a bit curious and mysterious about him. The abilities displayed by this man made her look at him with new eyes. What surprised her most was that he had actually investigated the background of those people before coming to the company. But like he said, no matter what his purpose was, he would not harm her. She really needed such a person to help her now, so she didn't want to investigate his purpose for the time being, and she was too lazy to ask who he was, since he was unwilling to tell her anyway. Afterwards, they discussed their next plan and went to the police station first. It didn't take much time at the police station, and the statement was completed in half an hour. What awaits Manager Liao and the others is imprisonment. The most important part of a company is the finance department. Now that the finance department is firmly in Bai Jingxue's hands, she can rest assured. When they came out of the police station, it was almost 1 o'clock, and Bai Jingxue invited him to the restaurant for lunch. At this time, Bai Chiutang had just finished lunch and was calling Xiong Huaiho, telling him everything that happened in the morning meeting. Bai Chiutang said anxiously, brother, what should we do now? The company is controlled by that little bitch Bai Jingxue. You have to think of a solution quickly. Don't worry yet. She won't be so proud for long. Everything is under my control. Xiong Huaiho said confidently, but he was surprised that Bai Jingxue could do this, but he was not worried because he was sure that Bai Jingxue would soon disappear from this world. Okay, since you have already made the plan, I won't say much. But you should come back as soon as possible. I'm afraid that if time goes on, that little bitch will make other moves. Lin Hao beside her is no ordinary person. Bai Chiutang said worriedly that after hanging up the phone, he kept smoking and thinking about how to deal with his niece Bai Jingxue. Bai Haifeng did not go home. Bai Chiutang knew his son well. When they separated at the company, he told Bai Haifeng not to be impulsive and not to cause trouble at this time to avoid unnecessary trouble. But it is unknown whether Bai Haifeng will listen to him. Chapter 9, Beautiful Imagination. After lunch, Bai Jingxue and Lin Hao returned to the company and went about their own business. Lin Hao had just been promoted to the Human Resources Manager. As the saying goes, a new official has 3 things to do when he takes office. As soon as he arrived at the company, he hurriedly held a meeting with the people in the Human Resources Department. The main discussions were to rectify the company's discipline and personnel transfers. Many managers had to be rearranged. Of course, all of these need to be done step by step. The meeting is just to discuss a plan. In fact, he already had the plan, and the meeting is just a formality. The meeting was over more than 2 hours later, and the clerk immediately printed out a new management system, which was discussed during the meeting. Bai Jingxue admired and agreed with his decisiveness. Although this guy was a bit of a gangster, he was still very serious about his work. The remaining hour or so passed quickly. After get off work, Lin Hao stood on the roadside waiting for a taxi. A red Cayenne drove over. Bai Jingxue rolled down the window and said to him, "Get in the car, I'll take you home." Lin Hao smiled, got into the car, and said humorously, "The president personally sent me off, can I regard it as a romantic encounter?" "Don't say those rude words to me. I just thought that since you helped me, I would like to give you a little reward. Don't think too much about it." Bai Jingxue took a look, started the car, and asked unhappily, "Where do you live?" "Qinshan Community." Lin Hao answered casually. "Qinshan Community." Bai Jingxue was stunned, but didn't say anything else. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Lin Hao asked with pretended curiosity. "No. Bai Jingxue said perfunctorily that she lived in Bihai Garden, which was across the road from Qinshan community. She thought, could this be a coincidence, or did this guy live there on purpose? Has he been spying on me? But looking at his strange expression, I don't think so. It should be a coincidence. They didn't talk much in the car. After more than an hour, we arrived at the gate of Qinshan community. Across the road was their high-end community, Bihai Garden. Lin Hao looked at her playfully. Aren't you going to give her a kiss before leaving? Get lost, you bastard. Bai Jingxue immediately raised her foot and kicked forward. Lin Hao grabbed her jade feet, and immediately felt the touch of stockings in his hands. He couldn't help licking his lips and said, "TSK TSK TSK TSK, look at how long these legs are. I can't play with them for a year. You bastard, let me go and get out of here right now. You're just trying to take advantage of me." Bai Jingxue was both ashamed and angry. If it wasn't for the fact that he helped her, she would have wanted to run him over with her car. How can you say that I am taking advantage of you? It's you who clearly offered your feet to me to touch. Lin Hao didn't let go, but instead the dirty hand started to fiddle with it. If you don't let go, are you looking for death? Bai Jingxue tried to pull her legs apart, but she couldn't get them free. Finally, she gritted her teeth and said, "If you don't let go, I'll bite you to death, believe it or not. You are so stingy. You won't even touch my feet. You can touch mine at will. Look how generous I am." Lin Hao smiled teasingly, but when he saw that she was angry, he let go. Get lost now. Bai Jingxue glared at him fiercely. Lin Hao grinned, blew a kiss, got out of the car, and said, "Don't miss me too much at night. If you really miss me, call me and I will do my best to comfort your loneliness and emptiness. Your whole family is empty, you scumbag." Bai Jingxue cursed sharply, and then muttered as she looked at his back, "You bastard, you took my first kiss away from me, and you still say I'm stingy. What a coincidence, this is my first kiss too." Lin Hao hadn't taken a few steps when he suddenly turned around and leaned against the car window with a smirk on his face. "There's no such thing as a first kiss for a jerk like you." Bai Jingxue's face suddenly turned red. What kind of ears does this bastard have? He could hear her even though she was speaking so softly. Seeing him still leaning against the car window with a smirk on his face, she scolded him, "You are smiling so smirk, why don't you get out of here?" "Okay, I was just kidding. Don't be angry. I'm going back now. Bye." Lin Hao smiled slightly and waved goodbye to her. After watching him enter the residential complex, Bai Jingxue turned around and entered the Bihai Garden across the street, as if she was afraid that he would know that she lived across the street from him. But she didn't know that Lin Hao not only lived opposite her, but his house also happened to be facing hers. He could have a clear view of the scene in her home by standing at the window. Bai Jingxue returned home, took the short skirt she wore for work out of her bag, put it in the washing machine, and muttered, "You bastard, you pervert, you clearly poured tea, what the hell are you thinking about?" She was still thinking about the time when Lin Hao took her panties and sniffed them in the office, especially the evil expression on his face, which still made her feel embarrassed. Then, she drank half a cup of hot water and went into the bathroom, turned on the water valve of the bathtub, and began to take off her clothes. After a tiring day, she took a warm bath and enjoyed herself. As the clothes were taken off, the graceful figure was revealed, and the proudly towering beautiful breasts looked even more majestic when wrapped in underwear. All of this was within Lin Hao's sight. Seeing that she was about to take off her underwear, he quickly returned to normal vision. He didn't want his energy to run wild like it did this morning, otherwise it would be troublesome. He couldn't just rush to her house and forcefully kiss her again. If that were the case, that girl would probably go crazy. However, it was not as serious as he thought. Although Bai Jingxue felt embarrassed and annoyed, she was not that angry. Instead, she felt a little bit of desire in her heart. She lay in the bathtub, gently scrubbing her body. She closed her eyes slightly, and the scene of kissing Lin Hao unconsciously emerged in her mind. She was addicted to that feeling. Although she was still a girl at the age of 26, she knew very well that kissing alone could not bring people to that level of pleasure. But at that time, she was very clear that she had really reached that level of extreme pleasure, and that pleasure still haunts her now. Who is that guy? Why are you helping me? What is your purpose in approaching me? Why does kissing him give me that feeling? Bar. What am I thinking about? Bai Jingxue suddenly opened her eyes. She couldn't think about that bastard anymore. If she continued thinking about it, she felt that she was becoming a bit despicable. Chapter 10. Something happened to Bai Jingxue. After taking a shower, Bai Jingxue dried her hair, stood in front of the dressing table, looked at the photos of Chen on the dressing table, and fell into deep longing and sadness. This photo is 20 years old and shows a boy and a girl. The boy was her brother who had been lost for 20 years. At that time, she was only 6 years old and her brother was only 10 years old. There were no signs of the accident on the day her brother got into trouble. It was just an ordinary day like any other. The only difference was that her brother went to school and never came back, and the school never saw her brother go to school. A 10-year-old boy just disappeared like that. If he had a car accident, someone would have reported it to the police. There was only one possibility: he was abducted by human traffickers. But who would kidnap a 10-year-old boy? Normally, no one would kidnap a boy of that age. Even if he is abducted, a 10-year-old child will remember to find his way home. Even if he is too young to do so at the time, he will come back when he grows up. But they wait year after year and hope day after day. 20 years have passed since then, and there is still no news from my brother. Her father also hoped to find her brother before he died, but she knew the possibility was almost zero. Over the years, they have published missing person notices in newspapers, and have also frequently posted them on Weibo and in their moments. Especially later when their business grew bigger and they became richer, they spent nearly 10 million yuan every year on missing person notices on TV, but there was still no news at all. Her mother died of depression 10 years ago, and she is the only one left in such a happy family. And her uncle was a despicable man who forgot his principles when he saw profit. It was impossible to expect him to help her. It was good enough that Bai Chutang and his family would not harm her. Bai Jingxue picked up the photo, held it tightly with both hands, and pressed it tightly against her chest. Her eyes were filled with tears because of missing her, but she refused to cry. "Brother, where are you? I really miss you. My mother died a long time ago due to depression caused by your separation. My father also died in a car accident. You are the only relative I have left. Brother, where are you? Come back soon." Bai Jingxue choked up a little, but she knew she had to be strong because she was the only one left in this family and no one could help her if she was not strong. Looking at her tear-filled eyes, Lin Hao, who was standing in the building opposite, felt a little sad. He truly understood her feelings because the boy in the photo was also his brother in life and death. He also knew very well that her brother could not come back because he died in a mission a month ago. Before he died, he entrusted Lin Hao to take good care of Bai Jingxue. Lin Hao came here to fulfill his brother's instructions. He not only had to protect Bai Jingxue, but also to help her take control of the company again and eliminate those who posed a threat to her one by one. But by that time, it would be time for him to leave. Because he had stayed in this place for too long, he was worried that the people from the Qianshao organization would find him. By that time, let alone protecting Bai Jingxue, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Bai Jingxue wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, sorted herself out, put the photo frame away, picked up her bag and went out. Lin Hao retracted his gaze. His perspective skills could control the distance and degree of perspective. Normally, he would not see through other people's bodies, let alone men. Who would have the time to look at a man's body? But he couldn't look at a woman's body now, as doing so would cause his energy to go out of control. Sometimes he would feel distressed because of this special skill. For example, in the morning he accidentally saw Bai Jingxue's body and his energy went out of control. So when Bai Jingxue was taking a shower and taking off her clothes just now, he quickly put away his perspective skills. Lin Hao knew that she usually went out to eat at this time. He also knew that she usually didn't eat at night, but went to a nearby tea restaurant to have a drink and order a fruit plate. Because it is easy to gain weight when eating at night, beauties like her pay the most attention to their figure. She can maintain such a perfect figure not for no reason, but because she has strict dietary requirements for herself. Lin Hao also knew that the Bai family had a villa in the NS area. It was their old house and had been there for more than 20 years. The reason why Bai Jingxue still lives here is because she wants to wait for her brother to come back. She is afraid that if her brother comes back one day and she is not there, she will miss the chance to meet him. The tea restaurant is less than 300 meters away, and it only takes a few minutes to walk there. Bai Jingxue did not drive, but walked slowly on the road, as if she was taking a stroll. A super beautiful woman walking alone on the street will naturally attract a lot of attention and size. This girl is so beautiful. My body is so fucking awesome. It would be worth it if I could live 10 years shorter if I could have some fun with it. A fair, wealthy and beautiful woman like her should have many friends and suitors, but she can only admire herself. Even if she has a few suitors, they are rejected by her coldness and arrogance. She also looks down on those so-called rich second generations. According to her, those second-generation rich people don't know how to do anything except eating, drinking and having fun. If you marry them, you never know when you will squander all your money. If she really had to choose a man to marry, she might as well marry that gangster, at least he could help her. The gangster she was talking about was naturally Lin Hao. Thinking of Lin Hao, she couldn't help but feel surprised. Why would I think of that guy for no reason? You jerk. No one would want to marry you. Gar. Just when she was feeling sad, suddenly a white van braked suddenly and stopped beside her. Before she could react, a big man rushed out of the car and grabbed her arm without any explanation. What are you doing? Bai Jingxue screamed in fright, and immediately felt something was wrong and was about to shout. But before she could shout, the big man slashed her neck with a knife, and her body went limp and she fell down. The big man hugged her and stuffed her into the car in one go, and no one noticed. The van drove away. The big man put Bai Jingxue on the last row of seats and ignored her, asking the driver to drive faster. After nearly half an hour, Lin Hao activated his perspective skill again and saw that Bai Jingxue had not returned yet. He felt something was wrong. Normally, she should be back in more than half an hour. He quickly took out his mobile phone and opened the tracking software. The red dot on it was moving rapidly towards the south and had already entered the highway. Lin Hao knew that she didn't drive out. She was clearly in the car at this speed. Even if she took a taxi temporarily, why did she take the highway at this time? Where was she going? If you go to a company, it's not in this direction. This is so unusual. He immediately sensed the danger and without hesitation, changed his shoes and went out. Something must have happened to Bai Jingxue, and it was still unclear whether he could get there in time. Now he could only hope that his premonition was wrong. If something happened to Bai Jingxue, how would he explain to his dead brother? He always believed in his premonitions, but this time, he desperately hoped that his premonition was wrong. Chapter 11, Struggle Without Hope. Lin Hao hurriedly ran out of the community, hailed a taxi and asked the driver to drive towards the highway. He didn't tell me the exact address, so the driver felt strange and asked, "Boss, where are we going on the highway?" "Get on the highway first, and then I'll tell you where to go." Lin Hao's tone was urgent. He was very worried about Bai Jingxue. Looking at the moving speed of the red dot on the phone, it had exceeded 80 yards. Although this speed was not very fast, it seemed to him to be an insurmountable distance at the moment. He wanted to call Bai Jingxue, but was worried that a call would anger the criminals. Although he was not 100% sure that Bai Jingxue was in trouble, the possibility was very high. For safety reasons, he could only suppress his anxiety and not call. "Master, drive faster," Lin Hao urged. The driver could see that he was in a hurry and smiled awkwardly. "Boss, this is already fast enough. If we go any faster, we will be speeding. It will be troublesome if the traffic police stop us and fine us. The fine is on me." Lin Hao took out his wallet and pulled out a wad of money. He was too lazy to count how much it was, but estimated that there was more than 15,000. He stuffed the money directly into the driver's hand and said, "Don't worry about the traffic police, this money is enough for you to pay the fine. Please hurry up, it's urgent." The driver couldn't help but be stunned. It was nearly 2,000 yuan and he was indeed tempted. However, if the traffic police found out, it would not be just a simple fine. The driver was in a dilemma. "Boss, this is not about money." Lin Hao suddenly raised his eyelids, his eyes turned cold, and he didn't bother to talk nonsense with him. He reached out and grabbed the back of his collar and lifted his hand up. The driver only felt his body lighten, and then sway. After a moment of confusion, the driver found himself sitting in the passenger seat, while Lin Hao had already sat in the driver's seat and was stepping on the accelerator to accelerate. "Who are you?" The driver was stunned and broke out in a cold sweat. He pointed at him and stammered, unable to speak clearly. "Don't worry about who I am. Just sit still and don't ask me anything else. Once you get to the destination, just leave. Just pretend that what happened today never happened." Lin Hao looked at the driver seriously and threatened him again, if you dare to talk nonsense, watch out for your head." "No, I won't talk nonsense." The driver was really scared. He didn't know how he did it. In a blink of an eye, he found himself sitting in the passenger seat. The speed was so weird and terrifying. Soon, they got on the highway and drove even faster. They saw cars being left behind one after another. From time to time, they could hear curses, asking if they were in a hurry to reincarnate. It was rare to see a taxi driving so fast. While speeding all the way, Lin Hao would occasionally pick up his phone to look at the tracker signal on it. The distance was getting closer and closer. At this speed, he would be able to catch up in more than half an hour. He just hoped that the car would continue to drive on the highway, so that Bai Jingxue would not be threatened and the criminals would not commit crimes in the car. If the criminals wanted to commit a crime, they would not have gone to the trouble of kidnapping her and would have just done it on the roadside. Unfortunately, the tracker slowed down and the route shown on it had already left the highway. Damn it! Lin Hao cursed angrily and wanted to speed up, but the accelerator had already reached its top. He forgot that this was a taxi and its top speed was only about 200 miles per hour. Besides, it was impossible to maintain full speed all the time and the car couldn't handle it. After getting off the highway, the van arrived at the LH area and drove towards the suburbs of the LH area. Binnan City is one of the most prosperous first-tier cities, and its so-called suburbs are not much different from the urban areas of third-tier cities. After nearly half an hour, the van arrived at a villa area and finally drove into a villa at the northernmost end of the villa area. This villa is some distance away from other villas and looks lonely and particularly deserted. As soon as the car parked, a fat man came out of the house. It was Wei Changan. "We're here!" Wei Changan shouted to the driver. The driver didn't answer, but just nodded symbolically, then turned around to look at the big man behind him. The big man behind opened the car door and was about to carry Bai Jingxue down. Bai Jingxue suddenly woke up and looked at the big man standing in front of her, looking down at her, as if he was about to commit violence. She kicked and cursed, "You beast, don't touch me. This girl is pretty fierce." The big man curled his lips, grabbed her feet with one hand, and tried to grab her collar with the other hand, saying in a threatening tone, "You'd better not move, I won't show any mercy to you." Bai Jingxue tightly grasped the big man's hands with both hands, struggled desperately, and cursed, "You beast, I will never let you succeed even if I die. If you have the guts, kill me." The big man chuckled and said, "You are wrong. I am not the one who wants to have sex with you. Otherwise, I would have done it in the car a long time ago. Why would I wait until now? Who is it?" Bai Jingxue was stunned. "Guess who I am." A voice came from the car door, and then a disgusting fat face poked in and said with a grin, "Boss Bai, how are you? Wei Changan, you are such a beast." Bai Jingxue glared at him, "Hurry up and tell them to let me go, or I'll call the police." "Call the police, I'm afraid you won't have the chance." Wei Changan curled his lips indifferently and waved to the big man, "Brother Li, thank you for your help." Li Ji didn't answer. He picked up Bai Jingxue and pushed her towards Wei Changan like a rag doll. Wei Changan hugged Bai Jingxue tightly, and was overjoyed. Smelling her body fragrance, he felt very happy. He licked his lips and said with a smile, "TSK TSK TSK TSK, it smells so good. I am so lucky tonight." "Brute." Bai Jingxue cursed loudly and bit his arm. "R." Wei Changan screamed, felt pain in his hand, and let go. Bai Jingxue fell to the ground, not caring about anything else, and ran towards the door, shouting, "Help, help. Chase after him." Wei Changan quickly shouted to Li Ji that he was too fat to run. Brother Li was very fast. He rushed over in a few steps, grabbed Bai Jingxue's arm with one hand, and pulled hard, causing her to stagger and almost fall to the ground. Li Ji picked her up, put his hand around her throat, and said grimly, "If you don't want to die, be quiet. Don't you know who I am? I'm the president of Huafeng Group. If anything happens to me, the police will investigate it thoroughly. You'd better let me go." Bai Jingxue calmed down a little, hoping that what she said would make them feel more cautious. "I don't care if you are president or a chairman, I just take the money and do the job." Li Ji said nonchalantly, and pressed his hand on her Adam's apple with increased force, making her speechless. Chapter 12 Resentment and Anger. Bai Jingxue was strangled by Li Ji, her pretty face turned red and she was unable to speak for a while. Wei Changan came over, rubbed his arm that was bitten by her, and said, "You stinky cousin, you dare to bite me, you will be in trouble later. You beast, you'd better let me go." Bai Jingxue shouted in a hoarse voice, the words almost squeezed out of her throat. "Of course we will let you go, but only after we have had enough fun." Wei Changan showed a wicked smile and waved to Brother Li, "Bring him in, let's have some fun together." Brother Li nodded and dragged Bai Jingxue into their house. Bai Jingxue had no strength to resist at all. Her neck was being strangled and she couldn't scream. She was dragged all the way to the second floor and pushed into a room inside. The driver also came in with an evil smile on his face. He stared at Bai Jingxue and his hands began to itch. He said to Wei Changan, "This girl is really hot. Hurry up. I can't wait any longer." Wei Changan said with a smile, "Don't worry, wait until I'm done. You and Brother Li have plenty of time, you can come together. What are you waiting for? Let's go together." Brother Li quickly took over the conversation, pushed Bai Jingxue onto the bed, and was about to pounce on her. It was the first time he had seen such a gorgeous beauty. She had a pretty face and a nice figure. She was curvy where necessary and perfectly rounded where necessary. Especially the alluring body odor on her body, which is definitely not the smell of perfume, but a pure girlish scent. Perfume will not have such a charming smell. Bai Jingxue was so scared that she quickly shrank back to the head of the bed, grabbed a pillow and threw it at him, cursing, "You bunch of beasts, don't come near me. Don't struggle. It's useless. You might as well cooperate. We promise to make you comfortable." Li Ji climbed onto the bed with a smile on his face and was about to pounce on her. When they were in the car, he couldn't control himself a little, but Wei Changan warned him not to touch her, and if he did, he would not give them so much money. For the sake of money, Li Ji had to endure it for the time being. After all, he could still have fun in the end. In order to prepare for today's good show, Wei Changan specially sent away the 2 servants in the house, and his wife happened to be traveling with their son these days. Just as Li Ji was about to pounce, Wei Changan quickly stopped him and said with a smile, "Li Ji, didn't we agree that I'll go first, and you guys can come after I'm done? Wouldn't it be more exciting if we all came together?" Brother Li said impatiently. "That's not." Wei Changan was a little embarrassed, but at this point, he didn't want to hide it from them, so he said in a gentle voice, "Brother Li, you don't know, I heard that she is still a virgin. I have lived for most of my life and have never had a virgin. I have to try it." "Oh, you're still a virgin? I didn't expect that. I have to go first then." Li Ji became even more excited, pushed Wei Changan away and pounced on him. Bai Jingxue wanted to get out of bed, but Li Ji grabbed her feet and was about to take off her skirt. "Asshole, let me go." Bai Jingxue struggled desperately and shouted, "Help, help, help, is there anyone? Save me." Wei Changan said, "You can scream, but this room is soundproofed. No one will come to save you even if you scream your throat out." With a swoosh, the skirt was torn. Li Ji pulled hard and the skirt was pulled below the knees. "You bunch of beasts, you shall not die a good death. Even if I become a ghost, I will not let you go." Bai Jingxue was even more panicked. She grabbed the skirt with both hands with all her strength and tried to put it on. But her strength was no match for Li Ji's, and her skirt was soon pulled down. Li Ji was about to take off her panties again, and Wei Changan also climbed onto the bed and said, "Li Ji, let me take off your panties. You can't handle this girl, so I'll do it." Li Ji refused to move aside. When he heard that she was a virgin, he was very happy. If he had known she was a virgin, he would have had sex with her in the car. Wei Changan grabbed his hand and said seriously, "Brother Li, I'll add another million. Let me go first." Li Ji hesitated for a while, rolled his eyes, and looked at Bai Jingxue again. He was really reluctant to give it up, but for the sake of the 1 million, he had to grit his teeth and reluctantly give it up. "Okay, then you go first, but hurry up, we 2 brothers can't wait." "I'll try to be quick." Wei Changan laughed along and pounced on Bai Jingxue like a tiger. He grabbed her hand with one hand and tried to strip off her clothes with the other. Bai Jingxue put her hands on her chest and gritted her teeth as she said, "Wei Changan, you are a beast worse than pigs and dogs. Aren't you afraid of going to jail for doing this?" "I'm afraid, but would you have the heart to let me go to jail?" Wei Chang'an was not worried at all and said, "You are a young lady and a celebrity in Binnan City. Do you have the nerve to call the police? It doesn't matter if I go to jail, but I am afraid that others will point fingers at you and say behind your back that you are a slut who was ruined by others and no one wants you anymore." Bai Jingxue was speechless for a moment. Despair suddenly surged in her heart, and she really didn't dare to call the police. When something like this happens, her reputation is ruined. But she was unwilling to accept this. How could she, who was pure and innocent, be defiled by three beasts in human form? How could she face the rest of her life? She might as well just die. Thinking of this, tears quietly fell and flowed into lines along the corners of my eyes. Seeing the tears on her face, Wei Chang'an became even more excited. He grabbed her collar with both hands and pulled hard. With another slip sound, the shirt was torn open. The white body was revealed, with only underwear covering the pair of towering breasts. At this last moment, Bai Jingxue was still fighting desperately. She tried her best to fend off the beast's claws and prevent him from touching her white body. "Even if I die, I will never let you succeed." Bai Jingxue made up her mind and suddenly bit her tongue. Li Ji reacted quickly, and quickly pinched her mouth with one hand, and said coldly, "This girl is quite stubborn, she wants to bite her tongue to commit suicide. There really are women who are not afraid of death." Wei Chang'an sneered and looked at her grimly, "You stinky cousin, even if you die, I will play with your corpse to my heart's content." Bai Jingshua's mouth was pinched by Li Ji, so she couldn't speak. She could only glare at them fiercely, her eyes bloodshot, full of anger and hatred. But she knew that she was really finished this time. The driver also climbed onto the bed, helped hold her hands, and said, "Fatty, hurry up, or we'll do it." "Okay, help hold her hand." Wei Chang'an laughed and was about to take off her underwear. Bai Jingshue's hands were grabbed and she was powerless to resist. Anger, resentment and hatred surged up in my heart and turned into tears that flowed down my cheeks, wetting the pillow. She longed for someone to save her, but no one came. No matter how she shouted, no one responded. Seeing those claws reaching towards her chest, her heart was broken. She knew that in the next second, her body would be ruined by these three beasts. Chapter 13, Heartbroken Beauty CEO. "Help, someone save me." Bai Jingshue's hysterical cries echoed in the room, but she could not break through the confinement and the sound could not be heard outside. "Go ahead and scream louder. That's more exciting." "Har har har har." Wei Chang'an burst into laughter and was about to grab the pair of pink and tender breasts with both hands. He seemed a little reluctant to do it, because Xiu Feng was so tempting, and she looked even more attractive in underwear. "Fatty, hurry up, don't dawdle, or I'll get on you." Li Ji grumbled impatiently. Wei Chang'an laughed and said, "Okay, watch me, I'm going to tear this girl's underwear off." Bang. With a loud bang, just as Wei Chang'an's claws were about to grab the pair of beautiful peaks, the door suddenly exploded. The door exploded into several pieces, two of which hit Wei Chang'an and the driver directly. The driver reacted quickly, jumped off the bed and got out of the way. Wei Chang'an, a fat man, was not so lucky. The door panel hit his back hard, almost breaking his bones. "R." Wei Chang'an screamed in pain, but before he could react, a figure flashed by. Then, a huge force knocked him out. With a bang, Wei Chang'an fell to the ground like a fat pig. When the three beasts reacted, they were shocked to see that Bai Jingxue was already in the arms of a man. "Who the hell are you? How dare you ruin my good deeds?" Li Ji reacted first, jumped off the bed, glared at the man and scolded him, but he soon recognized him and stared at him solemnly. "It's you. You know me, it seems you have planned this long ago." The person who spoke was Lin Hao. He tracked all the way here and saw the van downstairs. The signal was in the van. However, he was too lazy to care about the van and immediately activated his perspective skill. He saw that Bai Jingxue had been taken to the second floor by the three beasts and was about to be succeeded. He quickly quickened his pace, rushed upstairs and kicked the door open. Since Li Ji knew him, he naturally thought that these three guys had planned it in advance. Wei Chang'an must have shown them his photos, and there might be other conspiracies behind it. "Brother Li, this is the bastard, kill him." Wei Chang'an shouted at Li Ji, saying that the beast had fallen heavily and could not stand up for a while and could only sit on the ground with difficulty. Li Ji's face turned grim and he glared at Lin Hao. "Boy, we wanted to have some fun with you, but since you came to us, don't blame me for being rude. Lin Hao looked at him sideways and said disdainfully, you bugs are not qualified to fight me. Damn, I've seen some cool people, but I've never seen anyone as cool as you. Li Ji didn't find it funny. He rolled up his sleeves and waved to the driver, then let's have some fun with him. Go ahead. The driver immediately got into position, clenched his fists, and was eager to try. In fact, they also knew that he must have some strength since he could kick the door open with one kick, so they did not underestimate him and did not dare to rush over rashly. Lin Hao, it's you. Bai Jingxue finally came to her senses and thought she was finished. At that moment, she was completely desperate and closed her eyes, waiting for humiliation to come. But then she felt a hint of warmth and a strong embrace. In this embrace, she felt extremely safe. She thought she was dreaming and that she had really met a Prince Charming who had fallen from the sky. When she slowly opened her eyes and saw the person in front of her clearly, she was in disbelief. Is it really you? It's me. Lin Hao replied in a sonorous voice, looking down at her with concern in his eyes, don't worry, you are safe. It's safe. Bai Jingxue was a little dazed and murmured something, but her hands were tightly holding him, which made him feel a little painful. She just hoped that this was not a dream. It all happened too suddenly, so suddenly that she couldn't believe it was real. Call. At this moment, Brother Li jumped up and swept a punch at such a fast speed that the punch created a gust of wind. At the same time, the driver behind him also kicked him in the waist. Roll. Lin Hao shouted coldly, standing there motionless, and just raised his hand to block Li Ji and send him flying. Then, he swung his left leg like a dragon, and kicked the person driving behind him away. Bang bang. There were two dull thuds, and the two men hit the wall almost at the same time, especially Brother Li, whose face was pressed against the wall and two of his teeth were knocked out. The driver was even worse off. With a dragon-like tail kick, he was kicked directly in the crotch. With such great force, the crotch of the pants was immediately burst by the kick. R. The driver fell to the ground, holding his crotch and screaming. His crotch was stained red. Li Ji fell to the ground, stunned for a moment, pointed at him and stammered, "Who are you?" Lin Hao walked over and looked down at him. "Who I am is not something a bug like you can know." "Are you a warrior?" Li Ji asked tentatively. Only martial artists could have such skills. Ordinary practitioners could not do it, because he himself was a martial artist, but his strength was too low. Lin Hao didn't want to talk to him about this, so he stepped on his crotch with a cold look in his eyes, and was about to step on him. "Brother, spare my life, we can talk it over." Li Ji begged for mercy quickly. He knew that if he was kicked, the thing in his crotch would be lost, and he didn't want to be a eunuch. "You want me to let you go?" Lin Hao gave a wicked smile. Li Ji quickly responded, "As long as Big Brother lets me go, I can do whatever you want me to do in the future. As long as you say the word, I will die for it. I still have a say in Binnan. I don't want to be associated with a bug like you, nor do I need a bug like you to help me." Lin Hao's face was gloomy, and he turned to look at Wei Chang'an. "If you want to keep the things in your crotch, it's fine. You have to destroy the things in his crotch, or I will destroy yours." "Brother, this." Li Ji hesitated. He knew that he was going to put the crime of injury on himself. "Then you can all become eunuchs together." Lin Hao's eyes became extremely cold and he stopped talking nonsense with him. Brother Li held his feet and said quickly, "Brother, please be merciful. I will do it. I will do everything you say." Lin Hao said coldly, "Then hurry up, I don't have much patience." "Yes, yes, yes." Li Ji nodded repeatedly, climbed up and walked to Wei Chang'an. Wei Chang'an wanted to stand up, but was kicked to the ground by him. "I'm sorry, fatty." Brother Li stepped on Wei Chang'an's crotch. "Brother Li, please don't do that. We are brothers." Wei Chang'an hugged his legs and begged for mercy. If this thing was broken, what would be the point of living in the future? Since we are brothers, then you should consider it as fulfilling my wish. Li Ji felt ruthless and stepped down hard. Chapter 14: The Conspiracy Behind. R. When Brother Li stepped on it, Wei Chang'an's crotch was immediately stained red, and the thing inside was completely shattered. He screamed in pain, which was more brutal than slaughtering a pig. "It hurts so much, I'm going to kill you, R." Wei Chang'an bared his teeth and cursed loudly. He was not only cursing Lin Hao, but also cursing Brother Li. However, he did not dare to curse Brother Li by name. Brother Li knew that he was scolding him, but at this moment, he didn't bother with him. Anyone would curse loudly if their crotch was broken, which was understandable, so he just let him curse a few times to vent his anger. Hearing such a scream, Bai Jingshue's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. She grabbed Lin Hao even harder and buried her head in his chest, cursing in her heart, "You deserve it, you beast. It's lucky I didn't take your life." Brother Li turned around and looked at Lin Hao, and said very honestly, "Brother, I have done everything you asked me to do, can I leave now?" Lin Hao did not answer directly. He put Bai Jingshue down first, took off his suit and put it on her, buttoned it up carefully, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and said soothingly, "Okay, it's okay." Bai Jingshue didn't say anything. She tightened her clothes and wrapped them with her hands, as if she was afraid that the clothes would fall off. Then she stood next to him like a frightened little girl. Lin Hao knew that she was still in shock. At this moment, he was her only support and the only person worthy of her trust. He held her hand, and she felt the warmth in his palm. She subconsciously held it tightly, feeling very relieved. A warm current flowed from her palm to her heart, and her mood gradually calmed down. Lin Hao then looked up at Brother Li and asked bluntly, "What other plots do you have? Tell me the truth and don't test my patience, or you will regret it." "Brother, we don't have any conspiracy." Par. Before Brother Li could finish his words, Lin Hao flashed by and two loud slaps were heard. The next moment, Lin Hao was still standing there, his hand still holding Bai Jingshue's hand, as if he had not moved at all. Both sides of Kelliger's face were bruised, and with just these two hits, 3 teeth mixed with blood came out of his mouth. His face was twitching in pain, and even the veins on his neck were twitching. Lin Hao didn't say anything either. He just stared at him seriously. Just with that look, it felt like he could cut him into pieces. Li Ji didn't dare to lie anymore. Facing the godlike man, he was really scared, so he had to tell him all their future plans. Kidnapping Bai Jingshue here to commit rape was just the first step of the plan. They would not let Bai Jingshue go just like that. When they were done, they would take her onto a smuggling boat and sail it out to their high seas. When they reach their high seas, they will call Lin Hao and ask him to go to their high seas to negotiate with them. They will prepare another smuggling boat to pick him up at the designated seaside. When Lin Hao reaches their high seas, of course they will kill him once and for all and dump his body directly on the high seas without anyone knowing. They would make it appear that Bai Jingshue was the one who committed the murder, so that Bai Jingshue would not dare to call the police. Lin Hao was a returnee from Mauritius and had no relatives in China. His death was just death and would not attract anyone's attention. In this way, Bai Jingshue could only swallow this loss in silence. After hearing this, Lin Hao chuckled, "You are indeed a bunch of beasts. Not only are you inhumane, but you are also insidious and vicious. If you are left in this world, I don't know how many people you will harm in the future." In fact, he had roughly guessed their conspiracy. He said this to tell them that he didn't intend to leave any survivors. Of course, he was just trying to scare them. For someone like Li Ji, deterrence is the most effective way to control him. "Brother, I promise to be a better person and never hurt anyone again." Brother Li begged for mercy quickly and almost knelt down. It was obvious that he was scared. "Want to live?" Lin Hao deliberately asked him back, knowing that he was scared. Brother Li nodded quickly, "Think about it, as long as Big Brother spares my life, I am willing to do anything you want me to do." Lin Hao nodded in a serious manner and softened his tone, "Just be obedient. First, tell me who you are." "We are from the Black Shark Club." Li Ji replied without hesitation. "Continue." Lin Hao only said these 2 words. "R." Brother Lin was stunned and asked, "Continue what?" Par. 2 more slaps. Lin Hao glared, "What are you going to do? You ask me, if you are so stupid, what's the point of living? Just slap me to death. Don't hit me, bro. I got it." Li Ji was so frightened that he shrank a bit and said quickly, "Our Black Shark Club is the most powerful in Binnan. We are responsible for 4 districts and have more than 400 people. Haichang Club and Herchuan Club each control 2 districts, with a total of about 300 people." He was not stupid and knew what to say. He explained the situation of the 3 underground organizations in Binnan City one by one. Black Shark would explain it in more detail, clearly describing the location of the headquarters and the branch locations of each hall. Lin Hao wrote them down one by one and said, "If you want to live, listen to me from now on. Thank you for showing mercy, big brother. I will listen to you in the future." Brother Li felt as if he had been pardoned and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Hao asked for his cell phone number and instructed, "Remember to come whenever I call you. Once you've taken care of this, give me your car keys." "Okay." Li Ji walked to the driver, took the key from his waist, leaned over and handed the key to Lin Hao, saying, "Have a nice day, big brother." Bai Jingxue grabbed Lin Hao's hand, still a little frightened, unable to move or speak. Lin Hao smiled knowingly, bent down, picked her up, and said, "Let's go home." Bai Jingxue responded and then buried her head in his arms. In his arms, she felt especially warm and safe. At this moment, she felt that as long as he was with her, she could sleep peacefully even if the sky fell. This was the first time in her life that she felt the warmth of a man so truly, and this man was so strange to her. But she believed in him so much, she wanted to give her heart to him and let him protect her for the rest of her life. Lin Hao carried her downstairs, being very careful all the way for fear of disturbing her. Brother Li walked them downstairs and returned to the room. The two men inside were still holding their crotches and wailing. Li Ji dialed 120, sat by the bed, looked at Wei Changan, and said, "Fatty, don't hate me. If you want to hate someone, hate him. To put it bluntly, you asked for this. You wanted to deal with him, but you didn't figure out the situation first. If I knew he was so skilled, I wouldn't have taken your job. I didn't know that bastard was so skilled." Wei Changan had a sad face, hatred rising from his heart. "He made me so miserable, I can't stand with him. What else do you want? It's not easy to deal with him. I'll tell you the truth. Based on my judgment, his strength is at least at the telekinesis stage." Li Ji shook his head helplessly and waved his hand. "You won't understand even if I tell you this. Forget it, I won't say any more. I don't care what stage that bastard has reached, I want his life anyway, no matter how much it costs." Wei Changan gnashed his teeth and asked, "Even if you can't deal with him, your guild leader can definitely deal with him, right? Tell your guild leader that he'll pay any amount of money as long as he can kill him." Li Ji thought about it for a while and said, "Our president doesn't need to do anything about this. Our hall master can handle it. But can you afford the price? Don't worry about the money. Even if I can't afford it, my brother-in-law has it. He's the chairman of Huafeng Group, so he can give you as much money as you want." Wei Changan made up his mind to kill Lin Hao even if it meant losing everything he had. Chapter 15, Changing Clothes. It's easy if you have money, but if we want our hall master to help, it won't be as simple as 1 or 2 million. It will take at least 5 million. Li Ji looked down at Wei Changan. Wei Changan was in so much pain that he didn't have the strength to speak. He just nodded. "Okay, then prepare the money, take good care of your injuries during this time, and leave the rest to me." Li Ji smiled, turned to look at the driver, stood up and said, "You should also take good care of your injuries. I'll leave first." "Brother Li, I..." The driver had a sad face, tears streaming down his face in pain, and looked down at his crotch. "The ambulance will be here soon. It's okay. Medical treatment is so advanced nowadays. We can get well soon." Li Ji said something to comfort him, then turned and walked out of the room. He knew very well that it was impossible to fix that thing once it was broken. At this time, Lin Hao had just put Bai Jingxue in the passenger seat. He originally wanted to put her in the back seat, but she held his arm tightly and shook her head. Although she didn't say anything, he knew she was scared and didn't dare to sit in the back alone. After gently placing her on the passenger seat, Lin Hao helped her get her bag and cell phone from the back, placed them on her legs, and said in a gentle voice, "Okay, it's okay, let's go home." Bai Jingxue responded and pressed the bag against her crotch for fear of exposing herself. She was only wearing a pair of panties on her lower body. Although Lin Hao's suit could barely cover them, they would be exposed if she moved a little. Seeing these sexy and alluring legs, Lin Hao's mind had already been distracted. If it were any other time, he would have said a lot of dirty words. But at this time he could only endure it and didn't dare to make any jokes. He got in the car, started it, and turned on the heater. Although it is not cold during this period, with strong sunshine for several days in a row and even a little hot at noon, it is still a little cool at night. After leaving the villa, Lin Hao thought for a moment and asked, "Where do you live?" He thought that if he didn't ask and just sent her home, she would definitely suspect that he had been monitoring her for a long time. But when he asked this, Bai Jingxue became alert and looked at him suspiciously. She didn't want to doubt him, but what happened today was really too strange. At this time, she also recovered and calmed down. She took out wet wipes from her bag and wiped her face and eyes. Then she said seriously, "You saved me. I won't say anything else, but I hope you can tell me the truth. Why did you follow me? What is your purpose?" "I didn't follow you." Lin Hao looked surprised and said, "Please don't be suspicious of me, okay? I saved you out of kindness, but you actually doubted me. You didn't follow me, so how did you know that I was brought here by those three beasts?" Bai Jingxue didn't believe it at all, but she was not stupid, so of course she would think of these things. "It was just a coincidence. I was out shopping when I saw you being taken away by them. I followed you in a taxi, but the taxi was slow, so I was a little late." These were all excuses that Lin Hao had thought of long ago. He thought for a moment and said, "I'm still confused. You sent me home, so you left, right? Why are you there? Just make it up." Bai Jingxue glanced at him. He refused to tell the truth, so she didn't want to keep asking him. No matter what his purpose was, she believed that he was not lying. He did not harm her but was helping her. She felt somewhat grateful to him in her heart. At that moment, she almost regarded him as her Prince Charming and fell in love with him from the bottom of her heart. But now that she had calmed down, she felt ridiculous again. How could she possibly fall in love with such a hooligan? Even if he saved me, it wouldn't change his gangster nature. After getting on the main road, Lin Hao asked again, "Where is your home?" Bai Jingxue rolled her eyes at him and thought to herself, "Just pretend you're asking even though you know the answer." However, an idea suddenly popped up in her mind and she decided to play a trick on him. To the beachfront villa. Her villa is in the seaside villa area. She usually stays in the villa for 2 days on weekends. During the weekdays, she lives in the Bai Hai garden when she is at work, which is closer to the company. Of course Lin Hao knew all this, but he pretended not to know. He smiled nonchalantly, turned around and drove towards the highway exit. After more than half an hour, we got off the highway and drove towards the seaside villa. They didn't say anything along the way. After they got off the highway and drove into a more prosperous area, Bai Jingxue said, "Pull over first." "Is there anything wrong?" Lin Hao asked. "Go buy me some clothes first," Bai Jingxue said. Lin Hao couldn't help but move his eyes downwards, and smiled. "This is great, super short clothes, don't you women like this? The shorter the better. Why don't you just die?" Bai Jingxue was so angry that she grabbed her bag and threw it at him, thinking to herself that it turns out that dogs can't eat shit. "I'm in such a state and you're still making such a joke." Lin Hao grabbed her bag and said with a playful smile, "I saved you out of kindness, and it would be fine if you didn't repay me with your body, but you actually turned evil into kindness. Your conscience is really bad. Fuck you." Bai Jingxue was so angry that she cursed and glared at him. "What are you looking at? Go buy me some clothes or I'll dig your eyes out." Cut. Lin Hao pouted and said, "I'm not looking at your sexy legs. I won't look at them." After he said that, he quickly opened the car door and got out. If he didn't leave, the girl would definitely get angry. After he took 2 steps, Bai Jingxue suddenly felt scared again and quickly shouted, "Come back quickly. I've only taken 2 steps and you're missing me." Lin Hao turned back and leaned on the car window, saying with a smirk, "If you're so reluctant to leave me, then give me a kiss and I'll go. You bastard, if you don't leave, I'll hit you with my phone." Bai Jingxue was so angry that her eyelids rolled up and she raised her cell phone as if to hit him. Lin Hao blew her a kiss before turning and leaving. Joking needs to be done just right to be romantic. If a joke is over the top, it will not be funny anymore. Bai Jingxue spat at his back and thought to herself that she had never seen such a disgusting person. But then a smile inexplicably appeared on her face. Although this guy was annoying, somehow she didn't find him disgusting at all. She even felt that he was a little manly. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but be dazed, leaning back in her seat with a silly smile on her face. After a while, Lin Hao came back from shopping for clothes. Seeing her silly smile, he said, "You are smiling so passionately. Could it be that you miss me like this?" Bai Jingxue came back to her senses, glanced at him, and said unhappily, I miss you, give me the clothes. With your attitude, I didn't want to give you the clothes, but since you're so beautiful and sexy, I'll let you go. Lin Hao looked at her playfully, put his clothes on the seat, turned around, and teased her deliberately, hurry up and change. If you are slow, don't blame me for looking back. If you dare to peek, I will dig out your eyes. Bai Jingxue spat hard, but she still felt very happy when he straddled her sexy and beautiful body. She took her clothes, put the chair down, and went to the back to change. Lin Hao leaned against the car door, tilted his head, and watched the beauty inside take off her torn clothes. Her towering breasts were particularly tempting, and just looking at them made him feel an irresistible urge. Chapter 16: A Strange Gift. Watching Bai Jingxue changing clothes through the car window, Lin Hao also felt strange. She was left with only her underwear, and the underwear was as thin as a strip of cloth. He had almost seen it all, so why didn't his energy go out of control after seeing it? Do I have to watch all of them before my energy will go out of control? He really wanted to activate his perspective skill to try it out and see to what extent he would be able to see his energy out of control. But I didn't dare to try it casually. What if my energy went out of control? I couldn't forcefully kiss her again. She has just been through something like that, and you add fuel to the fire by forcefully kissing her. What's the difference between you and a beast? While he was thinking about it, Bai Jingxue changed her clothes, got back to the passenger seat from the back, looked at Lin Hao, curled her lips and said, You rascal, it's done. Lin Hao turned around and smiled, Do the new clothes fit you well? It's okay. Bai Jingxue replied calmly, throwing the tattered clothes she had changed to him, Help me throw them away. Lin Hao caught the clothes, rolled them into a ball, and threw them into the bushes. He got into the car, looked her up and down before starting the car. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen enough just now, you pervert? Bai Jingxue rolled her eyes and said unhappily, Don't think I don't know you're peeking. You knew I was peeking at you, but you didn't stop me. That means you like me peeking at you. Lin Hao smiled playfully and said, From this, I can boldly conclude that you have fallen in love with me. Stop being so conceited. Only ghosts would like a stinky hooligan like you. Drive faster. Bai Jingxue rolled her eyes. She didn't stop him from peeping just now because she felt there was no need to. He had already seen it anyway, and he had even forcefully kissed her, so let him see it. After nearly an hour, they arrived at the seaside villa area and drove along the road to the east side of the villa area. This villa was particularly large. Compared with other villas, this one can be regarded as a Suzhou garden. The van drove into the villa and stopped on the left side of the main house. When getting off the car, Bai Jingxue warned, Don't tell anyone about what happened today, especially my two cousins. Does your cousin live here? Lin Hao asked knowingly. Of course he knew that his cousin lived here, and they were a pair of beautiful and lovely twins. Bai Jingxue nodded in affirmation, and emphasized, Anyway, don't talk nonsense, and don't tease my cousin. That makes me sound like a thug. Lin Hao shook his head with amusement. You are even more rogue than a rogue. Bai Jingxue took over the conversation. They got out of the car and just walked to the door of the house. Two little beauties who looked like elves came out to greet them and shouted at the same time, Sister, why are you back today? Today is only Thursday. The two sisters speak almost in sync, and their dimples are particularly charming when they smile. This is my home. I can't come back yet. Bai Jingxue pouted and was about to introduce Lin Hao to them, but the two sisters immediately said, This is my brother-in-law, right? Lin Hao looked at the two sisters and smiled, neither denying nor confirming. He felt a little distracted when looking at the adorable twins, they were just too cute. Cuteness alone was not a big deal, the most terrible thing was the half-exposed chests, which were a little bigger than Bai Jingxue's. These two girls are wearing tight t-shirts, and their four breasts are about to burst the t-shirts. If they were any bigger, they would fall out. Seeing his ugly face, Bai Jingxue kicked him and said, You rascal, where are you looking? Lin Hao laughed teasingly, Okay, I won't look at you anymore. I'll just look at you. Be serious. Bai Jingxue glared at him fiercely, then introduced them to each other. The elder sister was Yangling Jiao and the younger sister was Yangling Xuan. Both sisters are lively and enthusiastic, but the younger sister Yangling Jiao is a bit more naughty. Yangling Jiao looked at Lin Hao and said, Brother-in-law, this is the first time we meet, and you come with nothing in your hands. No gift or anything. Yes, and it's a big gift. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. Lin Hao was filled with joy and glanced at the sisters' chests. These two girls were good in everything and had great figures just like Bai Jingxue. The only regret was that their breasts were underdeveloped and the sizes of their breasts were not the same. Of course, most people can't see it. The difference between the two breasts is just a little bit, and you can't see it unless you look carefully. But what kind of eyes does Lin Hao have? He can tell even a millimeter difference. What's the big gift? Brother-in-law. The two sisters asked excitedly at the same time. When they heard about the big gift, the elder sister Yang Lingjiao also showed enthusiasm. Bai Jingxue immediately corrected him. Everyone says this guy is not your brother-in-law, don't call him that. Yang Lingshuang said, Sister, you never bring a man back. We know what you are thinking. The fact that you brought him back says it all. What are you talking about, you damn girl? Bai Jingxue pinched Yan Lingjiao's arm, looked at the housekeeper Aunt Chen, and changed the subject. Aunt Chen, ask the kitchen to prepare dinner. I haven't eaten yet. Yes, miss. Aunt Chen nodded and went to find the chef. This villa had been bought 10 years ago, and apart from her father, there was no other man. Now that her father has passed away, the villa is full of women. Except for relatives who come to stay for 2 days sometimes, Bai Jingxue will not bring other men back, let alone let other men stay overnight. So when the two sisters saw Lin Hao, they called him brother-in-law, thinking that their relationship was basically set in stone. Bai Jingxue looked at the two sisters and said, I'm going to go upstairs to take a shower first. You guys go take care of him first. Okay, sister, don't worry, we won't treat your brother-in-law unfairly. The two sisters smiled mischievously. Silly girl, I've already told him that he is not your brother-in-law. If you keep shouting like that, I'll beat you up. Bai Jingxue glanced at them and went upstairs quickly. The two sisters took Lin Hao to sit on the sofa, each holding one of his hands, and said enthusiastically, Brother-in-law, don't you have a big gift? Lin Hao smacked his lips, glanced at their half-exposed chests, and said a little embarrassedly, Do you really want it? Of course, who wouldn't want a gift, said the two sisters. It's just that this gift is a little hard to talk about. Lin Hao said. It's hard to say, just take it out. The two sisters were a little impatient and wanted to search him. Lin Hao smiled humorously, Actually, this gift is not with me, but with you. The two sisters were puzzled. Brother-in-law, are you kidding us? You gave us gifts, how come the gifts are on us? Then I'll tell you straight. Lin Hao suddenly became serious. The two sisters were getting impatient. Just tell me now, don't keep us in suspense, it's making us anxious. Lin Hao stopped teasing them. Let me make this clear first. I'm telling you, you are not allowed to call me a hooligan like your sister did. Don't worry, no, you gave us a gift, why would we scold you? The two sisters were quite forthright and looked at him expectantly. My gift is to help you make both breasts the same size, and you can even make them one size bigger. As soon as Lin Hao said this, the two sisters' faces changed and they blurted out, Rogue. Chapter 17, To Treat or Not to Treat. Lin Hao looked at the two sisters with an aggrieved look on his face and said, I knew you would scold me. Sister Yang Lingjiao didn't say anything, but her eyes were full of contempt. Sister Yang Lingshuang also looked contemptuous and said, If you say that kind of thing, it would be strange if we didn't scold you. No wonder your cousin called you a hooligan. It turns out you are such a brother-in-law. Lin Hao said seriously, I'm really not being a hooligan. What I said is true. Don't be embarrassed. I think you have also noticed that your breasts are different in size. Although this is normal, you are different from others. What's the difference? The two sisters asked hurriedly. Of course they knew that their breasts were of different sizes, but they also searched for relevant information on the internet. It was normal for women's breasts to be of different sizes as long as the difference was not too big. But when Lin Hao said that they were different from others, they became nervous and thought they had some disease. Lin Hao looked at their breasts again and began to brag, To be honest, I know a thing or two about medicine. The difference in the size of your breasts is caused by the blockage of blood vessels in your left chest. It is congenital, which means it has existed since your mother's womb. Otherwise, your left breast wouldn't be smaller than your right breast at the same time. When he said that, the two sisters also looked down at their chests, thinking that what he said made sense. Yang Lingshuang quickly asked, What should we do? Will there be any problems? You are still young and your body resistance is relatively good, so there won't be any problems. But if you don't clear your blood vessels in time, it will definitely have an impact when you are older. Your chances of getting breast cancer will be much higher than others. Lin Hao was not talking nonsense, what he said was true, and he was really doing it for their own good. He was afraid that they would not take it seriously, so he said, if you have breast cancer, I'm afraid you won't be able to save your entire left breast. You don't want to have half of your breast removed, do you? Girls are most afraid of this. They are only 17 years old, in the prime of their youth, with a good figure. If half of their breast is really cut off, how are they supposed to live? Brother-in-law, you have to help us. The two sisters grabbed his hands and spoke worriedly, their eyes suddenly becoming pitiful and sympathetic. Lin Hao nodded in a serious tone, don't worry, I will help you. I don't want you to have any accidents in the future. It's just. He was a little embarrassed again and didn't know how to start the next sentence. Oh, brother-in-law, just tell me what it is, I'm so anxious. The two sisters were anxious, especially Yang Lingshuang, who looked at him pleadingly, we are not afraid of taking medicine. As long as it can cure our disease, we can take any bitter medicine as long as we don't have surgery. Lin Hao said, no need for surgery or medication. Then tell us what you want to do. We can do whatever you want us to do. Yang Lingshuang said without hesitation. Lin Hao thought for a while and said, you should have heard of massage therapy. The best method for special cases like yours is massage. Massage, you mean you'll give us a massage our breasts? The two sisters looked at him strangely, with an expression that said, I see through your evil intentions. Then they showed a look of contempt, you are indeed a gangster. We knew you had no good intentions and wanted to take advantage of us. After saying that, Yang Lingjie pulled her sister up and said, Shuang, let's ignore him and go upstairs to tell our cousin. Lin Hao quickly pulled them aside and kindly advised, it's really not what you think. Let me ask you, when you sleep on your left side, do you sometimes feel some pain? The two sisters looked at each other. This situation did exist, but they didn't take it seriously because they didn't feel any pain. Indeed. The two sisters nodded, and Yang Lingshuang sat down and asked seriously, are you really a doctor? Are you not lying to us? Lin Hao said very seriously, can I lie to you about this? This is related to your future lifelong happiness. In that case, can you teach us how to massage and we can do it ourselves? Yang Lingshuang asked again, and Yang Lingjie sat down again. Lin Hao said seriously, you can't learn this method, it requires luck. You know Qigong, right? I studied Chinese medicine, and my Chinese medicine is different from general Chinese medicine. It mainly treats by regulating the body's meridians and blood. The two sisters were a little reluctant, but you are man, and we are both virgins. How can we massage your breasts? I know you're embarrassed. I'm embarrassed too, but it's up to you. If you don't want to, I can't say anything more. Lin Hao tried his best to persuade her, but after thinking for a while, he said, let me think about it and see if there is any other way. The two sisters looked at each other, frowned, and said, brother-in-law, I'm leaving it to you. We don't want to get breast cancer in the future and have to have half of our breast removed. It's so ugly. I'll try my best. Lin Hao nodded. What he said made the two sisters feel extremely depressed. They were always worried about getting breast cancer. They felt like a stone was pressing down on their hearts, and they were very heavy. They were not in the mood to chat with him. Half an hour later, Bai Jingxue finished her shower and came downstairs wearing only her home clothes. At this time, the kitchen had prepared dinner for them, and the housekeeper, Aunt Chen, asked them to go into the dining room to eat. Bai Jingxue looked at the two sisters and saw that they looked worried. She looked at Lin Hao with ill intentions, you rascal, you bullied them again. Who do you think I am? Do I look like someone who would bully a girl? Lin Hao gave her an unfriendly look. They were fine just now, why are they all so sad? If it's not you who bullied them, then who else could it be? Bai Jingxue questioned him, looked at the two sisters, walked over and said calmly, Jiao, Shuang, don't pay attention to him, he is just a bad person. Come, accompany me to eat. The two sisters shook their heads, brother-in-law didn't bully us, it's just. Forget it, let's talk about it later. Yang Lingshuang added. As long as he didn't bully you, let's eat first and we can talk about anything after dinner. Bai Jingxue said kindly. She still loved her two cousins very much. Now, these two cousins are the closest to her, and the three sisters are like real sisters. The sisters' hometown is Guanghui City, the provincial capital. They moved here because they were studying at an art school in Binnan. The four of them entered the restaurant together. The two sisters had already eaten, but they just drank some red wine with them. They were still thinking about what Lin Hao said. Should they get treatment? If you want to treat it, you have to give him a massage. If it is not treated, what should I do if I get breast cancer in the future? The two sisters were in a dilemma, struggling fiercely in their hearts and couldn't make up their minds for a while. Chapter 18, Pranked by a Beautiful Woman. After dinner, the two sisters were still at a loss, so Bai Jingxue asked worriedly, "Are you okay? Tell me if you have any problems. Don't keep them in your heart." "It's okay." The two sisters responded with a forced smile. "It's okay, why are you guys so listless?" Bai Jingxue asked. She knew them, they were all lively and cheerful, and they loved to joke. It was rare to see them like this. In order to prevent her from suspecting anything, Yang Ling smiled and said, "Maybe I drank a little and felt a little dizzy." Bai Jingxue became even more worried. "Nonsense, drinking half a glass of wine can make you dizzy. I know how much you can drink, tell me what's wrong." "Sister, don't worry, we are really fine." The two sisters wiped away the clouds of worry on their faces, smiled cheerfully, and changed the subject. "You talk to your brother-in-law, we will go upstairs to rest first. There's nothing to talk about with this gangster, let's go up together." Bai Jingxue curled her lips and glanced at Lin Hao. "Come up with us, I'll prepare a room for you." Lin Hao smiled happily and said, "Yeah, you want me to stay overnight, and you even prepared a room for me yourself. Are you expressing your love to me?" Bai Jingxue corrected him, "Don't be so conceited. I saw that it was so late and you were drunk. If you drive back home, you might get caught by the traffic police and be detained." Lin Hao didn't tease her anymore and followed the three sisters to the second floor. The two sisters said politely, "Brother-in-law, good night." "Good night." Lin Hao also replied politely, and then comforted him, "Don't worry too much, it's okay." "Yeah." The two sisters nodded and closed the door. Bai Jingxue immediately stared at him. "Tell me honestly, what did you do to them?" "I didn't do anything." Lin Hao said. "Nothing. Why are they suddenly so worried?" Bai Jingxue looked at him suspiciously. "Please stop being suspicious. If I really want to bully them, will they still be so polite to me?" Lin Hao retorted. He didn't want to continue talking to her on this topic, so he asked, "Which room is mine?" "Well, the bed is made for you." Bai Jingxue led him to the inner room, and when they reached the door, she said, "I'm good to you, right? I made your bed myself. I was afraid you'd be cold, so I put a quilt under you." Lin Hao looked at her with a smirk on his face. "It's really good. It would be even better if we sleep together." "Get lost, stop talking nonsense to me." Bai Jingxue kicked him and turned to walk towards her room. When she reached the door, she turned back and added meaningfully, "There is a pajamas in the closet that my father wore, but it has been washed. I hope you can sleep well. You still care about me." Lin Hao smiled knowingly and blew her a kiss. "Good night, darling." "You rascal, who's talking to you, dear?" Bai Jingxue cursed angrily, went into the room, closed the door and laughed, saying to herself, "You will be in trouble later." Lin Hao closed the door and looked around the room. It was very large and luxuriously decorated. One room was almost as big as an ordinary family's one bedroom and one living room, and it was fully furnished. The bed was also very big, and he pressed it with his hand and found it was very soft. The Simmons mattress also comes with a special quilt, which may have other intentions. Lin Hao muttered to himself and used his X-ray skills to take a look, and indeed there was a problem. There was a piece of cactus cut into pieces under the quilt. Perhaps to avoid dirtying the mattress, the cactus was tied up with two pieces of newspaper. Because the cactus was cut into pieces and covered with the quilt, the bulge was not obvious. "If I just lie down like this, it would be really painful. However, this girl has a quilt under her, so even if she lies down, the thorns of the cactus will not penetrate very deeply, at most they will just break her skin, which means that she just wants to play a prank on herself and doesn't really want to harm herself. If she wanted to harm herself, she would put a sheet on top of it, and then lie down, and all the thorns would pierce into her. In the meat. This girl is really scheming. No wonder she brought me here. It turns out she was waiting for me here." Lin Hao ignored the cactus under the quilt, took his pajamas from the closet, and went into the bathroom to take a shower. After taking a shower and drying his hair, half an hour had passed before he lifted the quilt, rolled up the newspaper, and put the cactus into the drawer of the bedside table. He spread the quilt and then lay down on the bed comfortably. He glanced towards the door with a playful smile. Bai Jingxue was standing outside the door, with her ear pressed against it, listening carefully to the movements inside. But after listening for a long time, she didn't hear any movement inside. She was puzzled. Why didn't the gangster react? Aren't you asleep yet? Or maybe he discovered the cactus. That's impossible, I hid it very well. Or maybe the quilt is too thick and the cactus can't prick him. I should have known not to use a quilt and just put the bed sheet over it so that he wouldn't be stabbed to death. Just as she was about to leave in disappointment, a scream suddenly came from inside. What is that? It stabbed me to death, ouch. You deserve it. I'll stab you to death. Bai Jingxue burst into laughter, pushed open the door, and rushed in impatiently, with a big smile on her face, saying gloatingly, it feels good this time, right? I knew you had no good intentions. Ouch, it hurts so much. You put something under the quilt and it pricked my butt. Lin Hao grimaced in pain, looking like he was in so much pain that he could hardly bear it. He supported himself with one hand and touched his butt with the other hand, saying, You're still laughing. Come and help me up. I really can't bear it anymore. If you want me to help you, please beg me. Bai Jingxue was so happy, she was happier than if she had picked up millions. She walked to the bedside, looked at him as if she was watching a show, and said, You are so amazing, you can't get up now. Lin Hao looked in pain. My dear aunt, please stop gloating over my misfortune. Help me get off the bed quickly. My butt is covered with thorns. Seeing him in so much pain, Bai Jingxue felt a little sorry for him and bent down to help him up, but she still warned him, Don't bully me all the time in the future, or I'll have plenty of ways to punish you. Lin Hao suddenly showed an evil smile, grabbed her arm, pulled hard, pulled her down on him, then turned over while holding her and pressed her under him. Bai Jingxue was stunned and looked at him in amazement. Didn't you get pricked in the butt by a cactus? You little brat, you still want to fight me with your tricks? Today, I'll show you how I'll deal with you. Lin Hao looked at her in a ruffian manner. He grabbed her hands with one hand and tried to lift up her pajamas with the other hand. He slowly lowered his head and kissed her sweet lips. What are you going to do? Bai Jingxue suddenly became nervous and said, Don't mess around. This is my home. If you don't let me go, I'll call someone. She was not afraid, she was just nervous because she was not afraid of him. Even if he really kissed her, she would not resist it because she had been kissed by him once in the office and psychologically she did not have such a strong sense of resistance. Chapter 19, It's hard to explain. You can yell if you want. At most, more people will come to watch us kiss. I don't mind. Lin Hao smiled indifferently. He didn't care about Bai Jingxue's anger at all. He had seen through it long ago. If she really wanted to call someone, she wouldn't have said so much nonsense and would have just called directly. He said, and without thinking, he kissed her sweet lips. Bai Jingxue pushed him a few times, which was a bit half-hearted. She said embarrassedly, You bastard, if you want to kiss me, you should close the door first. It will be so embarrassing if someone sees us. Oh. Lin Hao let out a long oh and said, That's right, close the door, we can do whatever we want. He gave a wicked smile, but did not get up immediately. He continued to kiss her, and his dirty hands had already lifted up the pajamas of the beautiful woman. Close the door quickly, otherwise it will be troublesome if Jiao Jiao and Xuan Xuan come and see us. Bai Jingxue's pretty face turned red with embarrassment. She pushed him hard but failed to push him away. Sister, brother-in-law, you guys. Lin Hao was about to get up when the two sisters appeared at the door. He was able to see them kissing each other and also clearly see Lin Hao's hand on Bai Jingxue's breasts. The two sisters immediately looked at them with an extremely surprised expression. The elder sister Yang Lingjie quickly covered her eyes pretending to be shy. If you want to be intimate, please close your eyes. It's so shy. They just heard Bai Jingxue shouting and thought they were quarreling, but they didn't expect to see such an erotic and exciting scene. The younger sister Yang Lingshuan smiled slyly, pulled her sister, and said mischievously, Sister, brother-in-law, you continue, we didn't see anything. Hey, wait, it's not what you think. Bai Jingxue was so ashamed that just now only her face turned red, but now even her neck was red. She wanted to explain, but how could she explain it? Yang Lingshuan smiled as if she understood you and said, I understand, sister. You don't need to explain to us. It's really not what you think. Bai Jingxue quickly got out of bed, and Lin Hao also got out of bed immediately, but this guy just stood aside and laughed, waiting to see how she would explain. I have nothing to do with this gangster. He was the one who molested me. Bai Jingxue ran to the door and pulled the two sisters to explain. The two sisters looked at each other, then shrugged and said in tacit agreement, we understand. If we saw it, it means your brother-in-law molested you. If we didn't see it, it means you two were in love. What are you talking about, you two silly girls? He really molested me. Don't you even believe what your sister says? Bai Jingxue was anxious. She didn't want to be suspected that she and Lin Hao were a couple. The two sisters looked at Lin Hao again. Lin Hao lowered his head and did not speak. He seemed a little shy. The two sisters became even more convinced that they were boyfriend and girlfriend. How could this be indecent assault? Yang Ling nodded at Lin Hao and said, Sister, please stop talking like that. Look, my brother-in-law is shy and keeps his head down. Yang Lingjiao also hurriedly persuaded, Yes, my sister-in-law is a good person, you should treat her well and stop bullying your brother-in-law. I bullied him, and he didn't bully me, I would be very lucky. Which of you saw me bullying him? Bai Jingxue rolled her eyes in anger and didn't know what to say. The two sisters said playfully, My left eye, my right eye, my nose, I all saw you bullying my brother-in-law. Whose side are you on? I'm your sister, and you two are so heartless that you actually helped him. Bai Jingxue looked at them and was really angry. She turned around and glared at Lin Hao, saying angrily, You stinky rascal, why are you lowering your head? Come here and explain to them. Lin Hao nodded, pretending to be scared, and walked over. He looked like a henpecked husband and winked at the two sisters. Jiao Jiao, Xuan Xuan, stop joking with your sister. I will be the one who suffers later. In fact, your sister and I really don't have that kind of relationship. We were just playing a little game just now. Oh, it's a little game. We understand, we understand. The two sisters nodded meaningfully. After he said that, they became even more certain that they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Especially since Lin Hao is a henpecked husband, if he is not her boyfriend, why should he be afraid of her? Okay, stop joking. Go back to your room and rest. We need to rest too. Lin Hao hooked his hands on the sisters' shoulders and half pushed them out of the room. Yang Ling winked at him and gave him a thumbs up, Brother-in-law, come on, we support you. Well, I'll try my best. Thank you for supporting me. Lin Hao nodded with a smile and walked them back to the door. Yang Lingshuang thought for a moment and said, Brother-in-law, that. But she swallowed the words back. Lin Hao guessed what she wanted to say, you want to talk about massage therapy. The two sisters nodded at the same time. Yang Lingjiao didn't say anything. Yang Lingshuang said embarrassedly, we have thought about it. If there is no other way, we are willing to try massage therapy. Okay, no problem. As long as you've made up your mind, I can treat you at any time. Lin Hao smiled heartily. Then let's take a rest first. You take good care of my sister. The two sisters smiled knowingly and went back to their room. Lin Hao returned to his room and saw Bai Jingxue holding the chopped cactus wrapped in newspaper in her hands. Apparently she had taken them out from the drawer of the bedside table. You're lucky this time, but you won't be so lucky next time. Bai Jingxue squinted at him, spat, and walked to the door, saying, just wait and see. It doesn't matter. There's a long way to go. Lin Hao smiled humorously, and deliberately dragged out the word. Rogue. Bai Jingxue cursed angrily and went back to her room. She was not very angry about Lin Hao's rude behavior just now. If she was really angry, she would not have said so much to him and would have called the police directly. In fact, when Lin Hao kissed her, she had a very strong feeling in her heart. She really wanted him to continue kissing her, and even longed for him to kiss her hard, just like he kissed her with that brutal force in the office. Because the feeling was so wonderful that she still feels unsatisfied. The reason why people have such a strong desire for sex is that the pleasure they feel is so intense that they can't stop. Once people enjoy that feeling, it is like a demon beast that has penetrated into their heart, making them addicted and unable to extricate themselves. Although Bai Jingxue is a cold and arrogant woman, she is first and foremost a human being, and as a human being she has 7 emotions and 6 desires. Even if she said she didn't think about those things between men and women, she herself wouldn't believe it. But it was this gangster she mentioned that sparked her sexual fantasies. Although she hated Lin Hao, this mentality made her have an ambiguous fantasy about him. But she knew very well that she would never fall in love with him. Chapter 20, Strange Therapy. Bai Jingxue returned to her room, and Lin Hao closed the door, took off his pajamas, turned off the lights, and went to bed. He has always liked sleeping naked, which is good for skin metabolism and also for practicing martial arts. After lying down, he regulated the flow of his breath through his meridians. He fell asleep after a while, and his breath was still flowing through his meridians. No one else can do this. This is a unique method of practice that he discovered through long-term practice. Do. I don't know how long it was before there was a knock on the door. Although Lin Hao fell asleep, because his breath was constantly flowing through his meridians, he was very alert to the movements in the outside world. He was already conscious when he heard people moving around outside. He woke up as soon as there was a knock on the door. He quickly glanced around and saw Yangling Shuang standing outside the door. The girl was wearing a semi-transparent pink pajamas. She raised her voice carefully and lowered her voice to shout, brother-in-law, are you asleep?" This image was very much like a young widow who was having an affair. Lin Hao couldn't help laughing when he saw it. He turned on the light and said casually, "The door is not locked, come in." As soon as he lifted the quilt, he realized something was wrong. He was naked. He quickly shouted, Shuang, come in later." Before she could finish her words, Yangling Shuang pushed the door open and came in. What came into view was a naked big man. "R." Yangling Shuang screamed, quickly covered her eyes, and said shyly, "Brother-in-law, you actually took off your clothes. You hooligan, do you think I came to you for this? I'm not such a casual person. Lin Hao grabbed the pajamas on the bedside table and put them on. He walked a few steps to the door and closed it, explaining, Shuang, it's not what you think. I always like to sleep naked. When you knocked on the door just now, I was a little confused and didn't remember that I was not wearing any clothes. I just told you to come in later, and you pushed the door and came in. You blame me for that." Yangling Shuang had a look of aggrievedness on her face, her eyes rolling around, her 2 round eyes wide open as she stared at him. Lin Hao laughed and said, "Okay, don't be angry. You didn't suffer any loss, did you?" Yangling pouted her lips and said out of the blue, "Who said I didn't suffer any loss? They say you will get sty if you look at a man's thing. What should I do if I get sty? It's so ugly to have sty in my beautiful eyes. You have to pay for it." Lin Hao laughed along. This girl was better at joking than him. He pulled her to the sofa, asked her to sit down, looked her over, and asked knowingly, Shuang, why are you looking for me so late? You're asking even though you already know the answer." Yangling Shuang glanced at him indifferently and said directly, "Didn't you say you would give us massage treatment? I discussed it with my sister and decided to give it a try first. If it works, my sister will come again. This girl is very straightforward and doesn't waste time. She says whatever she wants to say. Although she is still a little shy inside, she has finally let it go. Regardless of whether Lin Hao's medical skills are true or false, the symptoms he described do exist in the 2 sisters. So they can only give it a try. They don't want to get breast cancer in the future, have half of their breast removed, and then die. If Lin Hao can cure their illness, it wouldn't matter if they gave him some advantage. Lin Hao didn't expect them to make the decision so quickly. He was a little surprised. He paused for a moment and said, "Oh, let's start now. Lie down." Yangling Shuang couldn't help but feel a little strange. "I heard that Chinese medicine requires acupuncture and moxibustion, right? I am different from other Chinese medicine practitioners. I don't use that. I treat diseases entirely with my hands. Any disease can be cured with just a touch of my hands." Lin Hao smiled and asked her to lie down. Yangling Shuang lay down half believingly, but she felt uncomfortable lying on the sofa, so she said, "Brother-in-law, I'd better sleep on the bed. It's uncomfortable to lie on the sofa." "Okay, it's more convenient on bed." Lin Hao nodded, but he didn't think much about it. The girl was suspicious and looked at him suspiciously. "What do you mean by more convenient?" It's nothing, it's just to make it more convenient during massage. What are you thinking? Lin Hao shook his head in amusement and added, do you think I look like that kind of person? Picture. Yang Lingshuang took over the conversation without thinking, then stood up and walked to the bedside. She looked at Lin Hao again before sitting down. With some caution, she slowly lay down and said, it's agreed that it's just a massage. Don't worry, if I really do something to you, your cousin will kill me. Lin Hao looked at the girl seriously, flexed his fingers, and said, lift up your pajamas. The girl didn't ask any questions, but just looked at him warily and slowly lifted her pajamas up to above her chest. Brother-in-law, what are you looking at? Start. Seeing him staring at her body in a daze, Yang Lingshuang raised her voice and reminded him. Okay, let's start now. Close your eyes. Lin Hao came back to his senses, moved his wrist, and was about to press on her left breast. Why do you still want to close your eyes? Yang Lingshuang became more alert. Don't be nervous. I just want you to relax by closing your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes either. Lin Hao explained, then pressed his fingers on 2 acupuncture points on her left chest, slowly injecting a trace of qi into the points. Yang Lingshuang immediately felt a warm current flowing into her body. She could even clearly feel this warm current flowing through her blood throughout her body. Afterwards, her consciousness became blurred, and she felt her body floating, as if she was lying in the clouds, which was extremely mysterious. As the energy continued to flow in, she felt her whole body activated, and her meridians were wrapped in layers of air currents. The feeling was both wonderful and soothing, which intoxicated her. However, the floating feeling made her feel a little empty, and she subconsciously wanted to grab something. This grab grabbed Lin Hao's hand, and the grip became stronger and stronger. Hearing this enchanting voice, Lin Hao felt itchy in his heart. He really wanted to tear the girl's clothes off and then pounce on her like a hungry wolf and force herself on her. He also knew that this massage method would make people addicted, but her reaction was a little too strong. Just as he was muttering to himself, a moment came that surprised him even more and made his blood boil. The girl actually put her hands behind her back, unfastened the hook on the back of her bra, and pulled her bra up by herself, calling out, brother-in-law, my good brother-in-law, Oh my god, this is the end. Chapter 21 Shy Yang Lingshuang. Yang Lingshuang lifted up her underwear, and Lin Hao's heart sank immediately. It's not that he didn't want to look, but looking at the key parts would cause his energy to run wild. This is over. He was just about to close his eyes when he suddenly felt strange. Why didn't his energy go out of control? After hesitating for a while, Lin Hao simply looked at her intently, his eyes wide open, staring at the girl's erect and completely exposed beautiful breasts. Driven by his energetic force, the girl's breasts became more and more erect, and his fingers could feel the fullness more clearly. But even so, it still did not cause the energy to run wild. What's going on? Lin Hao became more and more puzzled, and his gaze slowly moved downwards. Do I have to see what's below to cause my energy to go out of control? He couldn't help but feel a little overjoyed. He had thought that as long as he saw any key part of a woman, his energy would go out of control. In the past, I had to see the bottom to see it, but now I can rest assured. When I have nothing to do in the future, I can look at the girl's breasts. It's not bad. Bar. Why did the painting style suddenly become evil? I'm a gentleman, why would I just think about looking at girls' breasts for no reason? Unless the girl insists on showing it to me, like Shuang, who takes the initiative to unbutton her underwear, and keeps calling out, brother-in-law, my good brother-in-law, I want. Listening to the girl's soul-stirring cries, Lin Hao's heart was already racing like 1,000 horses galloping, and he wished he could throw himself on the girl and love her well. But reason told him that he couldn't do this. The other person came to him for treatment, and only if he trusted him would he lie in front of him without any hesitation. If I did that, I would be worse than an animal. But if we really do nothing, wouldn't we be worse than animals? Although he thought so, he subconsciously increased the strength in his hands, and his hands began to become restless. Gradually, he also immersed himself in this wonderful atmosphere. Half an hour later, Yang Lingshuang woke up, opened her eyes, stared at Lin Hao, and said with a blushing face, brother-in-law, what are you doing? Lin Hao came back to his senses and said blankly, I'm treating you. Is this considered a cure? Yang Lingshuang looked at him in disbelief and pointed at his hands. Those dirty hands were constantly climbing up her peaks, the movements were so enthusiastic and skillful. Looking at his hands, Lin Hao felt extremely embarrassed. He had no idea that he had gone so far. However, his reaction was also unusually fast. He immediately returned to normal and said solemnly, "Yes, this is also part of the treatment. From acupuncture point massage to massage of the entire chest, this is a whole set of complicated processes." "Oh." Yang Lingshuang responded shyly. She didn't know whether she was naive or was fooled by him, but she believed him anyway. Because she felt so relaxed and wonderful throughout the whole process, she couldn't help but believe it. "Is it okay now?" Yang Lingshuang asked weakly, a little shyly. This guy even shamelessly rubbed the girl's beautiful breasts and said harmlessly, "Okay, the first course of treatment is over. After 2 more courses, your illness will be cured." He took his hand away, and made a pose to finish the exercise, took a long breath, and asked, "Shuang Shuang, do you feel better?" "Yeah." Yang Ling responded. She was embarrassed to talk about the feeling, so after thinking for a while she added, "I feel like breathing is much easier." "That's good, it means it's working." Lin Hao nodded knowingly, stood up and turned around. Yang Lingshuang put on her underwear, got out of bed, and straightened her pajamas. Only then did she feel something was wrong down there. The whole place was wet, and it felt like both sides were wet. "Brother-in-law, I'm going back to my room." The girl was even more shy. She lowered her head and walked towards the door. When she opened the door, she turned around and said, "Brother-in-law, good night." "Good night." Lin Hao answered happily with a smile as bright as the wind. Yang Lingshuang seemed to be infected by his wind-like smile and was no longer so shy. She winked at her, closed the door and left. As soon as the door was closed, Lin Hao laughed excitedly. Looking at his hands, his smile became a little evil. "What a nice girl, she is such a good cousin. Will it be Jia Jia's turn tomorrow? I'm really looking forward to it." Yang Lingshuang returned to the room. Her sister Yang Lingjia was still awake. She was lying on the bed, watching TV and waiting for her. Seeing her sister coming back, Yang Lingjia couldn't wait to ask, "How is it? Is it effective? Did he lie to us?" Yes. Yang Ling stammered and lowered her head, not knowing how to tell her sister. She felt a little confused and a little frightened. Seeing her sister blushing and hesitant, Yang Lingjia became worried. She grabbed her sister's hand and asked, "What's wrong? Don't be afraid. Tell me if that guy bullied you. I'll help you teach him a lesson." Yang Ling shook her head, not knowing what to say. But her behavior made Yang Lingjia even more anxious. She jumped off the bed, pulled her towards the door, and said angrily, "How can you dare to bully my sister? Let's go find my cousin and drive that hooligan out." "Sister, it's not what you think." Yang Lingshuang quickly pulled her sister aside and explained, "My brother-in-law didn't bully me. He's not what you think he is. He's very good to me. I didn't bully you, why are you blushing and hesitating? You're trying to scare me to death." Yang Lingjia felt a little relieved, but still a little anxious, and asked, "What happened?" I. Yang Ling hesitated for a long time and was too embarrassed to say it out loud. Yang Ling exhaled tenderly and said impatiently, "Oh, you're making me anxious to death. What happened? Tell me quickly." What's wrong?" Yang Lingshuang felt more and more shy as she spoke. She bit her lower lip and lowered her voice so that only she could hear it. Yang Lingjia couldn't help but feel confused. "What do you mean by that? What is that thing?" It's an orgasm." Yang Lingshuang blurted out suddenly, took a few deep breaths, and tried to calm her agitated emotions. Yang Lingjia's eyes suddenly opened wide, and her mouth opened wide. It took her a long time to recover. "Orgasm, that bastard really did that to you, bastard, how dare he do that? No, I want to call the police, my brother-in-law didn't do anything to me." Yang Lingshuang kept explaining, holding her sister tightly, afraid that she would call the police, and said, "Brother-in-law was just giving me a massage, but I don't know why, I just orgasmed like that." Yang Lingjia looked at her in amazement. It was unbelievable. She had never heard that massage alone could make people orgasm. Chapter 22. I like seeing beautiful women angry. "Where did he press you?" When Yang Lingjia asked this, her eyes moved to her sister's crotch. She thought that Lin Hao must have pressed her there, causing her sister to orgasm. Seeing her sister looking at her like that, Yang Lingshuang glanced at her sister and spoke well of Lin Hao. Sister, what are you thinking? My brother-in-law is not as dirty as you think. He only pressed my chest. Is this true or false? Yang Lingjiao still didn't quite believe it, but she became a little interested. She pulled her to the bed and said, tell me about it quickly. Let's not talk about it for now. I'm going to take a shower first. I'm all wet. Yang Lingshuang waved her hands and ran into the bathroom. The bedrooms on the second floor all have separate toilets and bathrooms. Where is it wet? Yang Lingjiao asked in surprise and wonder, but soon understood, and said in a long voice, oh, I understand. After Yang Lingshuang finished her shower, dried her hair, and went to bed, she lay sideways with her sister. She was no longer shy, but instead had a hint of yearning and anticipation. She said, sister, let me tell you, that feeling is really comfortable. Yang Lingjiao pouted, look at your lustful face, are you looking forward to being fucked by him? If my brother-in-law really wants to do that, I don't have any objection, but I'm afraid my cousin won't agree. Yang Lingshuang smiled carelessly. She was joking, of course, as the two sisters loved to joke around anyway. If my cousin knew, she would scold you to death. You are seducing other people's men, okay? Yang Lingjiao tapped her sister's forehead and got back to the point, let's not talk about this anymore. Do you feel any effect after the massage? She was worried that she would be fooled by Lin Hao and that he would take advantage of her and it would have no effect. That would be like losing both the wife and the army. Of course it works. I feel like I can breathe much more easily. Now I sleep lying here and I don't feel any pain in my chest anymore. Yang Lingshuang deliberately lay on her left side. They never lay like this before because when they did so, they would feel a dull pain in their hearts. Yang Lingjiao nodded in relief, it seems to be somewhat effective, at least it's not a lie. Sister-in-law is so nice, of course she won't lie. Yang Lingshuang kept praising Lin Hao and said, sister, go and try it tomorrow. I guarantee you will be very happy. Go away. I'm not as crazy as you. I want to be a lady from a wealthy family. How can I be so casual? Yang Lingjiao pouted, but she was muttering in her heart, is it really that cool? Is this just a lie? Am I really going to try it tomorrow? Yang Lingshuang laughed jokingly, go to hell with your lady, I still don't know you. Don't forget that we are twin sisters. Stop joking and go to sleep. You have classes tomorrow morning, so go to bed early. Yang Lingjiao turned off the lights. The two sisters hugged each other and fell asleep quickly. Their breath was as sweet as orchid and they had no dreams all night. Yang Ling's double sleep was particularly sweet. Lin Hao had cleared the meridians for her, and her body was completely relaxed, so she slept well naturally. Early in the morning, Lin Hao returned to the second floor after morning exercise in the yard. Bai Jingxue just came out of the room. She glanced at him indifferently without saying anything. Good morning. Lin Hao greeted her with a smile as gentle as the morning breeze. Did you dream about me? Only a ghost would dream about you, a stinky hooligan. I slept well and didn't dream. Bai Jingxue replied unhappily, went downstairs, thought for a moment, and then turned back to add, come down quickly to have breakfast, we have to hurry to the company. You care about me so much, you're afraid that I'll eat late and get hungry. Lin Hao said with a smile. I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. I've never seen anyone as shameless as you. Bai Jingxue rolled her eyes at him and went downstairs. Lin Hao went to the bathroom, took a shower, and changed into yesterday's clothes. The clothes he had taken off yesterday were washed in the fully automatic washing machine, and the maid put his clothes into the room in the morning. After putting on his clothes and combing his hair, he examined his handsome and sunny face in the mirror and said admiringly, TSK TSK TSK, how can there be such a handsome man in the world? You are so handsome, how can others live? It's really a sin. He turned around and walked out of the room. The two girls came out of the room, and Yang Lingshuang immediately greeted them enthusiastically, brother-in-law, good morning. Good morning. Lin Hao greeted the two sisters with a smile on his face. Yang Lingshuang immediately took his arm, as naturally as if she were taking her arm with her boyfriend, and smiled with a peach blossom on her face. Brother-in-law, are you used to it in our house? It's okay, it's okay. Lin Hao nodded and answered repeatedly. This girl is really enthusiastic. She is so enthusiastic that I feel a little uncomfortable. I feel like she is going to throw herself into my arms and give herself to me. You'll get used to it. Will my brother-in-law live at home from now on? Yang Lingshuang asked again. It's hard to say. Let's see later. Lin Hao smiled and thought for a moment before adding, it mainly depends on what your cousin thinks. That's no problem, cousin. I'll take care of it. Yang Ling took over the conversation with confidence. She wished he could live here forever. Lin Hao also saw what the girl was thinking. He was worried that Bai Jingxue would let him stay for one night and would not let him come today. Now with Yang Lingshuang's help, there would definitely be no problem. He looked at the two sisters again and said, You got up so early, are you going to class? Yes. Yang Lingshuang smiled sweetly and said, We will go to school on the same route as my cousin, and my brother-in-law will go with us later. Okay. Lin Hao nodded. They chatted until they reached the restaurant on the first floor. When Bai Jingxue saw Yang Lingshuang holding Lin Hao's arm, she reminded him, Xuan, stay away from that gangster. Don't get so close to him. Oh. Yang Lingshuang quickly let go and explained, Sister, don't misunderstand. Bai Jingxue said, I don't misunderstand anything. There is nothing wrong between him and me. I am just worried that you will be cheated by this gangster. Yang Lingshuang said, Sister, you don't have to worry about this. My brother-in-law is so nice, how could he cheat me? What benefit did he give you that you are speaking for him like this? Bai Jingxue glanced at him and said, Hurry up and eat. Everyone sat down and had breakfast together. The breakfast was mainly for beauty and nourishment, and was relatively light, but each dish was very precious. Lin Hao couldn't help but feel deeply moved. Rich people really know how to enjoy life. They go to such great lengths to have breakfast. This meal is probably enough to cover the expenses of an African refugee family for half a year. After dinner, they went out together. The two sisters were going to school and were going the same way as them. The sisters had a car and were driving a Maserati leading their way. Lin Hao drove the van behind them. Bai Jingxue sat in the passenger seat and squinted at him. Hey, rascal, I'm telling you, stay away from my cousins. Don't go after them. You're jealous. Lin Hao answered the question irrelevantly and smiled playfully, deliberately trying to irritate her. He liked to see her angry, because when she was angry, her pair of peaks would rise and fall dramatically, which was very exciting to watch. Chapter 23, Encountering a Beautiful Teacher on the Road. Only a devil would be jealous of you. Bai Jingxue cursed angrily and said, I'm afraid that you, a hooligan, will harm my cousins. They are still innocent students, only 17 years old, not yet adults. Stay away from them. Who said they are underage? I think they are more developed than you. Lin Hao's eyes inadvertently moved to her chest, revealing a wicked smile. Rogue, why don't you just die? Bai Jingxue raised her foot and kicked him. She was obviously angry because his chest began to rise and fall, and the amplitude of the rise and fall became larger and larger. She said angrily, Can you be more serious? It was just a joke, why are you so angry? Lin Hao smiled humorously and added, But you look really good when you're angry, and their ups and downs are even better. What ups and downs? Bai Jingxue didn't understand what was going on. This guy's eyes were fixed on her chest. She looked down and naturally understood everything. But the rise and fall of the chest is a natural reaction when you are emotionally excited. It is uncontrollable, especially for women. The bigger the breasts, the more obvious it is. She tightened her collar and said unhappily, Drive carefully. What are you looking at? If you keep looking, I'll dig out your eyes. Only then did Lin Hao turn his head and concentrate on driving. After more than half an hour, they followed the two sisters into the university town and followed their car directly to the gate of Binnan Art College. This was the peak time for students to enter the school. Some went out to buy breakfast, some went out and then went back in. Men and women almost filled the entrance. Then a beautiful figure came out from the door, and with the appearance of this figure, almost everyone's eyes were focused on her. Especially those boys, all of them regarded her as a goddess. The boys who knew her greeted her enthusiastically, for fear of missing the opportunity to pass by the goddess. Lin Hao had sharp eyes and spotted this goddess-like beauty at first sight. However, it could be seen that this beauty was a few years older than the student next to her. Looking at her clothes, it was obvious that she was not a student but a teacher here, because she was wearing a light blue teacher's uniform. The beauty has the traditional Chinese woman's black and shiny hair, a standard oval face, and a charm of classical beauty. Like Bai Jingxue, the beauty also has a proud and attractive figure. Judging from her slightly exposed chest, Lin Hao knew at a glance that it was a standard C cup with a perfect valley curve. It was that perfect arc that made the boys' gazes unwilling to move away for a long time. They all wanted to dig out their eyeballs and stick them on the goddess chest to peek into the scenery inside. There is a bus stop a few meters to the left of the school gate. The beautiful girl walked quickly to the platform, took out her cell phone from her bag, checked the time, and looked very anxious. Just then, Lin Hao and his team drove past the platform. The Maserati in front stopped. Yang Ling, who was driving, rolled down the window and greeted the beautiful woman, "Teacher Liu, good morning." "Good morning." The beautiful woman also greeted them, and from her tone, it could be heard that she was in a hurry and didn't seem to want to talk to them much. Yang Ling Xuan also noticed it, so she asked, "Teacher Liu, do you have something urgent to go out for?" The beauty nodded, but soon shook her head. "Nothing, you guys go in, class is about to start." The beauty obviously didn't want them to know what she was going to do, so she urged them to go in quickly. The two sisters were enthusiastic people, not to mention that she was their teacher, so they were even more enthusiastic. The two sisters said at the same time, "Teacher Liu, if you have something urgent, please don't be polite to us. I can ask our cousin and brother-in-law to take you there. They are right behind. Don't bother, I can just take a taxi." The beauty declined, but still turned her head to look at the van behind. "You'll have to wait for a taxi at this time." The two sisters got out of the car and waved to Lin Hao and the others, shouting, "Sister, brother-in-law, come here." Lin Hao and Bai Jingxue looked at each other before getting out of the car. Bai Jingxue asked first, "Jiao Jiao, Xuan Xuan, what's wrong?" "Nothing." Yang Ling Xuan introduced them to each other. The beautiful girl was their acting teacher, Liu Feifei, 25 years old. After the introduction, Yang Ling Xuan continued, "Teacher Liu has something urgent to do. Brother-in-law, sister, can you give her a ride?" "Of course, no problem, I'm always happy to serve beautiful women." Lin Hao took over the conversation humorously. He also realized that Liu Feifei had something urgent to do, and it was very urgent. Driving her there was just a piece of cake, so of course he had to help. Liu Feifei was indeed in a hurry. Since they were willing to take her, she did not refuse. She shook hands with Lin Hao and said politely, "Then I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Lin. I need to go to the Dahao Hotel. Is it convenient for you?" "That's convenient. We're on our way." Lin Hao smiled politely, opened the back door and invited her to get in. Lin Hao and Bai Jingxue also got in the car. After saying goodbye to the two sisters, they sped up and drove towards the Dahao Hotel. The Dahao Hotel is about a 20-minute drive from here and not far from the Huafeng group, so it's just along the way. Lin Hao knew the location of the Emperor Hotel as soon as he arrived here, because he had to pass by the Emperor Hotel on his way to work. Moreover, he got a piece of information from Brother Li last night, that the Dahao Hotel is the branch of the Black Shark Club Donli Hall. Liu Feifei sat in the back seat, not saying a word, leaning back in her seat, looking a little dazed. Lin Hao saw it clearly from the rearview mirror in the car. She clasped her hands together and sometimes pulled her thumbs. Such actions showed that she was afraid and very nervous, and worried about what was about to happen. "Teacher Liu, are you in any trouble?" Lin Hao turned his head and took a look, then asked politely. Liu Feifei was stunned for a while before she came back to her senses. "Oh, nothing, just a little thing. You are Xuan Xuan's teacher, and also my friend. Don't be polite to me. If you have any problem, just tell me. I will definitely help if I can." Lin Hao was very enthusiastic. He was not so enthusiastic just because she was a beauty, he sincerely wanted to help her. Liu Feifei looked up at him, hesitated for a long time, and then sighed, "I'm afraid you can't help with this. Talk to me first. If I can't help you, maybe I can give you some advice. As the saying goes, one good man needs two helpers." Lin Hao cancelled her. "Thank you, it's not a big deal, I can handle it myself." Liu Feifei forced a smile. She didn't want to say anything because she didn't want to implicate him. This matter was really not something he could solve. If she involved him, it might cost him his life. Since she refused to say, Lin Hao did not ask any more questions and drove towards the Emperor Hotel at a faster speed. Chapter 24, Playing to a New Level. It would normally take about 20 minutes to drive from the school to the Dahao Hotel, but Lin Hao only took more than 10 minutes to get there. Lin Hao took out a business card, turned around and handed it to Liu Feifei behind him, saying, "Teacher Liu, this is my cell phone number. If there is anything urgent, please call me immediately." "Okay, thank you." Liu Feifei took the business card and took a look at it. There was only Mr. Lin and a mobile phone number written on it. She put the business card into her bag, said a few words of thanks, and got off the car in a hurry. Lin Hao looked at her back and wanted to say a few more words of concern, but then he thought better of it. Bai Jingxue glanced at him and said unhappily, "You rascal, you can't take your eyes off a beautiful woman, right? People have already gone far away, and you still don't drive. Look, you're jealous again." Lin Hao laughed and started the car. "Stop being so conceited and drive faster," Bai Jingxue said angrily. "I feel that Ms. Liu might be in danger if she goes to the Imperial Hotel. She's such a beautiful woman. If something bad happens to her and I didn't help her, I will have a guilty conscience for the rest of my life." Lin Hao shook his head, looking melancholy, as if he would be letting down the party and the people if he didn't do something. "Then go ahead. I'm not stopping you." Bai Jingxue said this angrily. She didn't want him to go. "I do want to go, but it's a pity that I'm so ruthless. Hey, let me take you to the company first." Lin Hao sighed dejectedly and drove to Huafeng Group at the fastest speed, which took only 6 or 7 minutes. When they arrived at the company gate, Bai Jingxue saw that he had no intention of getting out of the car, so she said, "You really plan to go?" "Yes." Lin Hao nodded affirmatively without turning off the car. "Don't say I didn't remind you. They don't appreciate your kindness at all. Don't try to please them. They didn't ask you to help," Bai Jingxue said sarcastically. "As long as I can stick to the beautiful woman's butt, no matter whether it's hot or cold, I'm willing." Lin Hao laughed, his eyes slowly moved to her buttocks, and said meaningfully, "I'm helping you like this, my hot heart is also sticking to your cold butt, and you still call me a hooligan. Go to hell, you can't spit out ivory from a dog's mouth. Get out of here now. I don't want to see you for even a minute." Bai Jingxue exhaled angrily, hit him twice with her bag before getting out of the car, slammed the door shut, and when she saw him start the car, she quickly shouted, "Come back soon." "It depends." Lin Hao left after saying this. "You dare not come back and see how I deal with you." Bai Jingxue pouted angrily and walked into the company with resentment towards him, muttering in her heart, "You filthy rascal, you don't know who you are when you see a woman, you are so lewd, I curse you to die at the hands of a woman." Just when Lin Hao left the entrance of the Emperor Hotel just now, Li Ji arrived at the Emperor Hotel right after him. Li Ji took the elevator to the second floor of the hotel. There was a restaurant on the second floor and an office area inside. He went straight into the office area and arrived at the general manager's office as if he was familiar with the place. The person sitting in the office is Shidingxiong, the leader of the Dongli Hall of the Black Shark Club, who also serves as the general manager of the Dehao Hotel. 37-year-old Shidingxiong seems a bit deep and unapproachable. Just as Li Ji was about to raise his hand to knock on the door, it opened. Shidingxiong suddenly appeared at the door, with a younger brother leaning forward. "Master, are you going out?" Brother Li quickly took 2 steps back and said respectfully that he had called Shidingxiong before coming and explained his purpose. Shidingxiong glanced at Li Ji, obviously very dissatisfied with him, and said coldly, "I have to go downstairs to do something now, you wait in the office first, and we can talk about your matter later." "Yes." Li Ji answered with a compliment. After Shidingxiong finished speaking, he and his younger brother left and immediately entered the elevator. The younger brother pressed the button for the basement floor. "Did Liu Feifei bring the money?" Shidingxiong asked his younger brother. "Where does she get the money? If she did, she would just transfer it to us." The younger brother came closer, with a strange expression on his face, and then added, "Master, don't worry, I guarantee she won't be able to escape from your palm. You can play with her however you want." "What do you mean by playing? Am I that kind of person?" Shidingxiong looked at his younger brother seriously. No, the whole master is a gentleman and our idol." The younger brother quickly flattered him. "Bullshit, only idiots would act like gentlemen. I mean, if you want to play, you should play with a woman's heart. What's the point of just playing with her body?" Shidingxiong pulled the corner of his mouth and said, "Get a woman's heart, then kick her away. When you're done playing with her, sell her to be a prostitute. Do it once when you have nothing to do." Seeing her heartbroken and desperate expression when she wants to kill me but can't do anything to me, that's what I call fun. Hi, it's really high. Their whole master is their whole master. His way of playing is different from ours. He has reached a new level. I give you a thumbs up and express my admiration for you. In fact, we all know that Shiding has played with women many times, and many women ended up like what he said. He treated them well at the beginning, but when he had enough fun with them, he would just throw them into hotels to work as prostitutes. He would play with them from time to time, and he would pick them up as a PRO client, but he would not pay them afterwards. What kind of perverted mentality must one have to come up with such means to play with women? As soon as the elevator door opened, we were hit by a bustling noise. The scene was extremely spectacular and intense. This is an underground gambling place, and you can see all kinds of gambling methods you can think of here. Many people spend money like water here, millions or even tens of millions, and it may be gone in less than an hour. Many people lose everything here, some win, but they will eventually lose everything. The casino is open to customers. If you have money, they will be polite to you and may even lend you money for luxury gambling. This is because they have investigated your identity and know that you have the ability to repay the money, or they have other purposes for you, so they will lend you money. Once they know that you have lost so much that you are unable to repay, or that you are of no use to them, they will throw you out like a dog. If you dare to cause trouble here, there are only two outcomes: death or being beaten to a cripple. Someone will naturally take care of it. When these gamblers saw Shiding, they greeted him very politely. Obviously, many of them knew him, and quite a few of them had asked him to borrow money. Shiding also greeted these people one by one and walked towards the VIP room at the innermost part. His younger brother leaned over to clear the way. When we arrived at the door of the private room, I opened it. There were 4 people in the private room. One was Liu Feifei, the other 2 were Shiding men, and the other was an old man in his 50s, who was Liu Feifei's father Liu Huzhan. Just by hearing the name, one can tell that he was originally an honest countryman, but since he came to this big city in his early years, he has changed completely. From an honest mountain man, he turned into a gambling addict, and finally involved his daughter. Brother Xiong, please be patient for a few more days. I will definitely pay you back in a few days. As soon as Shiding came in, Liu Huzhan immediately began to beg. Sit down. Don't stand. We can talk about the money easily. Shiding smiled politely and deliberately reprimanded his younger brother. How do you treat guests? How can you let Uncle Liu stand? Why don't you ask Uncle Liu to sit down? The younger brother quickly helped Liu Huzhan sit on the sofa with a respectful look on his face, and kept saying sorry. Shiding walked up to Liu Feifei, stretched out his hand to hug her, and said, "Oh, Feifei, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault for neglecting you. Come on, sit down." Liu Feifei walked away quickly, not daring to sit down, and said seriously, "Manager Shi, I will pay back the money my father owes you, but I can't pay back so much now. I can sign a contract with you and repay it in installments." She thought that they would accept this method. After all, they lent money just to make money, and they would not risk their lives for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Besides, if she killed the father and daughter, who would pay them back? Chapter 25. Have a good talk. Liu Feifei said she wanted to pay it back in installments. Before Shiding could say anything, the younger brother beside her took over the conversation arrogantly. Pay it back in installments. Are you sure? Your father owes us more than 800,000 yuan. Your salary is not enough to pay the interest. Do you know that the interest is more than 40,000 yuan a month? Liu Feifei's heart sank. With such a high interest rate, she really couldn't afford to repay it. She could only stammer, I will get a loan from the bank. I'm afraid the bank won't give you a loan. Even if the bank gives you a loan, how much can you borrow? The younger brother's attitude was very disdainful. Shiding deliberately glared at his younger brother. How did you talk to Feifei? Apologize to Feifei immediately. I'm sorry, Miss Liu, I spoke too rashly, please forgive me. I understood what they meant and apologized. They were all acting. They just wanted Shiding to win Liu Feifei's favor. It's okay. Liu Feifei said politely with reluctance. She could see that they were acting for her. She was not stupid, but she didn't know what their purpose was in doing so. Before coming, she thought they would use some force to scare her. After all, she came here because they threatened her father. But she didn't expect Shi Dingxiong to be so polite. But the more polite he was, the more she felt that he was just a weasel paying a New Year's visit to a chicken, and he had no good intentions. Shi Dingxiong looked at Liu Feifei. The more he looked at her, the more he liked her. The more he looked at her, the more it aroused his desire. He had seen many beauties and had played with countless of them, but this was the first time he had seen a top-notch beauty like Liu Feifei. She is really big where she should be big, small where she should be small, curvy where she should be curvy, and convex where she should be convex. Her figure is perfect. As he admired her, he imagined in his mind the scene of being intimate with her, and he wanted to tear off her clothes immediately to take a good look at the scenery underneath her clothes. Manager Shi. Liu Feifei felt very uncomfortable being stared at by him like that, so she cried out twice. He. Shi Dingxiong came back to his senses and laughed heartily. He took 2 steps closer and grabbed her hand before she could step back. He half pulled and half dragged her to the sofa and asked her to sit down. He said, Fei, although my subordinate was a little rude, he did have some truth in what he said. Think about it, your monthly salary is only 6,000 to 7,000 yuan, which is not enough to pay back the interest. It will take a long time to pay back more than 800,000 yuan. If it were someone else, they wouldn't be so polite and would have already done something extreme. I'm here because you two depend on each other, which is not easy. And I'm different from others. I'm very kind, I like making friends, and I like helping friends even more. Shi Dingxiong held her hand and spoke earnestly, as if he really cared about them wholeheartedly. He thought for a moment and then said, I've thought of a way to have the best of both worlds. I happen to be in need of a secretary, and you are an educated person and a teacher, so you are perfect for this job. I'll give you 40,000 a month, and as long as you come to work here, the interest will be waived. In this way, you can pay back the money in 2 or 3 years, and you and your daughter can live a more affluent life. Don't you think it's great? Manager Shi, I've never been a secretary, and I know nothing about hotel business. I'm afraid I can't handle this job. Liu Feifei declined tactfully. She certainly knew why he wanted her to be his secretary. Hey, Feifei, just think of this as helping me. Look at these rough guys around me. What else can they do besides fighting and killing? I really need someone as careful as you to help me with some daily work. Even if it's just me begging you. Shi Dingxiong held her hand and spoke sincerely, as if he was eager to recruit talented people. Liu Huzhan, who was sitting on another sofa, also saw Shi Dingxiong's intention. Although he was afraid, for the safety of his daughter, he had to pluck up the courage to say, Brother Xiong, this has nothing to do with my daughter. I will find a way to pay you back. Don't talk too much. The younger brother quickly glared at Liu Huzhan. Shut up. I told you to be polite to Uncle Liu. You don't understand what I'm saying, do you? Shi Dingxiong glared at the younger brother fiercely, and then said, Uncle Liu, I want to talk to Feifei alone. You go to the lounge and have a rest first. Liu Huzhan was anxious. Brother Xiong, I owe you money, just talk to me, don't embarrass my daughter. Shi Dingxiong winked at his 2 younger brothers, who understood what he meant. They pulled Liu Huzhan up and led him to the door, pretending to be polite and saying, Uncle Liu, we'll take you to rest. Our hall master will take good care of Miss Liu. Brother Xiong, no, Feifei is my only daughter, you can't hurt her. Liu Huzhan became more and more anxious, even to the point of crying. He wanted to struggle, but couldn't. He was dragged out of the private room by his 2 younger brothers and directly into the rest room. The younger brother who came with Shi Dingxiong also left the private room, closed the door and stood guard at the door, preventing outsiders from approaching. As soon as the door closed, Liu Feifei was startled and wanted to get up, but Shi Dingxiong grabbed her and said, Feifei, relax a little. Why are you so nervous? I won't eat you. Manager Shi, you want me to be your secretary. I'll go back and think about it. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Liu Feifei had a premonition of what was about to happen, and she said this just to find an excuse to leave. Such generous conditions, why would you consider it? Shi Dingxiong hugged her as he spoke, the smile on his face becoming somewhat evil, and he put one hand on her leg and became restless, saying, Feifei, be my secretary, I will definitely take good care of you. He had wanted to slowly develop feelings for her, but now he couldn't wait any longer. Her allure had completely aroused his desire. He didn't want to wait even a second longer and could not wait to possess her. It must be very satisfying to forcefully penetrate a beauty like this and watch her scream in pain when she is being raped. That kind of enjoyment is incomparable. Manager Sha, don't be like this. If you want to talk, let's talk properly. Liu Feifei pushed him, but didn't dare push too hard for fear of angering him. Yes, let's talk it over. It's really good that we can talk while having sex. Shi Dingxiong completely tore off his disguise, revealing his violent and evil side. He pressed her under him and tore her clothes with one hand. No, don't do this, let me go. Liu Feifei screamed in fear and pushed hard, but she couldn't push it open. She could only scream desperately, help, help, help. My baby, scream, scream louder, it will be more passionate. Shi Dingxiong was not worried at all because the private room was equipped with a soundproofing system, so even if firecrackers were set off inside, no one outside could hear them. Chapter 26, Beautiful Teacher's Request for Help. With a swoosh sound, Liu Feifei's top was torn open by Shi Dingxiong's huge tear, revealing two pink and white peaks. The peaks were only covered by underwear, which made them even more tempting. The tight and deep valley seemed to have infinite magic that attracted Shi Dingxiong's eyes. His soul seemed to be hooked, and he was stunned for a long time. TSK, 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 it's just perfect. Shi Dingxiong was filled with admiration. It was the first time he had seen such perfect breasts. His hands stopped in the air, as if he couldn't bear to touch them. Faced with such a perfect beauty, a devil like him would feel reluctant to trample on this beauty. But after he finished admiring it, this perfect body aroused his desire even more, and his hands could not help but reach out to the pair of proud peaks. Go away and don't touch me. Liu Feifei tried her best to grab his hands to prevent the beast from touching her body. Snap. With a crisp sound, Shi Dingxiong slapped her on the face, revealing his vicious face. Little cousin, don't be shameless. I slept with you because I think highly of you. I wouldn't want any other woman if she was given to me. Brother Xiong, please let me go. I will definitely pay you back the money I owe you. Please let me go. Liu Feifei begged desperately, but she knew she had no way to escape today. Her pure body was about to be ruined by this beast. Thinking of this, pain and humiliation surged into her heart and tears flowed uncontrollably. Seeing her heartbroken and shedding tears, Shi Dingxiong became even more excited. Cry, cry loudly, I like to see women crying, it's exciting. He grabbed her hands with one hand and tried to tear off her underwear with the other. Liu Feifei no longer had the strength to resist. She could only accept her fate. The pain, unbearableness and humiliation spread in her heart, making her feel like dying. Help, someone save me. Liu Feifei looked at the ceiling with empty and weak eyes, cried out sadly, and tears fell like rain. Bang. With a loud bang, the door suddenly burst open. Immediately afterwards, a person was thrown in and hit the opposite wall directly. Then, a figure flashed in and slapped Shi Dingxiong on the forehead. Shi Dingxiong also reacted quickly. He jumped up and met the attack with a palm. Bang bang. The two palms collided with two dull sounds, and Shi Dingxiong was knocked back 2 meters and fell behind the sofa. But when he calmed down, he found that Liu Feifei on the sofa had disappeared, and she was already in the arms of another man. The person who was just thrown in was the younger brother guarding the door. He was lying on the ground like a dog, motionless, and only painful gasps could be heard. Who are you? You are so bold as to cause trouble in the Black Shark Society's territory. I think you are tired of living. Shi Dingxiong glared at the young man and gathered his energy in his hands again, intending to take the initiative. After those 2 palm strikes, Shi Dingxiong was already at a disadvantage. The young man's martial arts skills were not lower than his, but he also did not believe that a young man in his early 20s would have higher martial arts skills than himself. Even if he did, they would not be much higher. Moreover, he had several subordinates who were warriors. Once those subordinates came, they would tear him to pieces in minutes. The young man ignored him, helped Liu Feifei straighten her clothes on her chest, wiped the tears from her face, and comforted her. Teacher Liu, don't be afraid, it's okay, I will protect you. Lin Hao, it's you. Liu Feifei looked at Lin Hao in disbelief, her voice choked with sobs. She really couldn't believe that he was the one who came to save her. They had just met and were not even friends. Why would he come to save her? And how did he know that she was here? But at this moment, she no longer cared about these things. She hugged him tightly, buried her head in his chest, and her body couldn't help shaking. Lin Hao held her tightly with one hand and stroked her gently with the other. He knew that she was shaking because she was extremely scared. It was an instinctive reaction. What's wrong? What happened? Several younger brothers rushed over, including the two younger brothers who had left earlier. Liu Huzhan also followed timidly, but he only dared to stand at the door, holding onto the door frame and sticking his head to look inside. The guests outside all stopped and looked over here. Some had already gathered at the door, chattering about what was going on. Brothers, kill this bastard. Shidingxiong waved to his men and clenched his fists, ready to attack. Among these subordinates, 3 were warriors. Upon hearing their hall master's order, the 3 warriors prepared themselves and attacked. Snap. Lin Hao kicked the floor tiles broke, and the chair next to him shook. Then he turned around and kicked the chair away. Click, click. The chair was kicked into several pieces, and the broken pieces of wood hit the 3 people who were rushing over. Bang, bang, bang. The powerful impact directly knocked 3 people away. 2 of them fell to the ground, and 1 crashed into the door, knocking down several people surrounding the door. Liu Huzhan leaned against the door frame and was not knocked down, but he was also shocked. Only then did he see clearly that his daughter was held in someone's arms and her clothes seemed to be torn. The 3 men fell to the ground and couldn't get up. All they could do was wail in pain. Shidingxiong was a little worried now. These 3 men were his most powerful subordinates. Their strength was all in the force transformation stage. He himself was not sure he could knock down all 3 of them at the same time with one move, let alone seriously injure them. Who are you, kid? Shidingxiong calmed himself down and did not dare to act rashly. Lin Hao looked at him with contempt, as if he were looking at a stink bug. Who am I? A scum like you has no right to ask about me. Shidingxiong immediately became angry and pointed at him. Boy, don't think you can be arrogant here just because you have some ability. This is the territory of the Black Shark Club. Wait until my brothers arrive and see how arrogant you can be. If you don't want to die, kneel down and apologize to me, and I may let you go. Let me go? Don't you even ask me if I will let you go. Lin Hao looked at him with contempt and made fun of him. You're looking for death. Shidingxiong was completely enraged. He suddenly jumped up, used his hands as claws, and waved them quickly, creating a trail of claw shadows. In just a blink of an eye, Shidingxiong rushed over, and his claws attacked Lin Hao like countless steel claws. Lin Hao stood there motionless, still holding Liu Feifei in his arms. Everyone thought he was scared silly. With such speed and force of attack, his head would be torn into pieces. Par par par. Then, everyone heard a series of crisp and powerful slaps. In the blink of an eye, a man with blood on his face fell to the ground. To everyone's surprise, the person falling to the ground was not Lin Hao, but Shidingxiong. No one knew what was happening. They couldn't see the quick movements at all and could only stand there in shock as a spectator. Chapter 27 I Can't. Shidingxiong fell to the ground, stunned for a moment. When he came to his senses, he felt a burning pain on both sides of his face. He reached out to touch them and looked again. His hands were covered in blood and his facial skin was broken. His face immediately swelled up. Fuck your mother. Shidingxiong cursed angrily, stood up angrily, swung his fist and attacked Lin Hao again, bringing up a strong wind pressure. Even the onlookers at the door felt the strength of the wind pressure and everyone quickly retreated. But Lin Hao remained motionless. When the fist was about to hit his forehead, only his right hand shook. Bang. There was only an ear-splitting thud, and Shidingxiong flew out directly and hit the wall for 5 meters away, causing the wall to crack. He stayed on the wall for 5 seconds before falling down. Puff. Shidingxiong fell to the ground, his heart tightened, and he spat out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes widened as he looked at Lin Hao in disbelief and unwillingness. What he was unwilling to accept was that his strength had reached the 6th level of telekinesis, so how could he not be defeated by a green boy? He just couldn't believe that a young boy in his early 20s could have better skills than himself. Who are you? Shidingxiong stared at him in disbelief, supported himself with his hands, and managed to stand up. Fortunately, his skills have reached the telekinesis stage. If it were an ordinary person, such a huge impact force would have shattered his internal organs and he would have died long ago. I am a person who specializes in dealing with scum like you. Lin Hao replied word by word, put Liu Feifei down, helped her tighten her torn clothes, then took off his small suit, put it on her carefully, buttoned it up, and said softly, "Teacher Liu, it's okay, don't be afraid." Liu Feifei didn't say anything, but looked up at him slightly, watching him help her put on her clothes and button them up. It was all so careful and gentle, and so cozy and warm. Seeing that she was a little dazed, Lin Hao smiled and asked, "Teacher Liu, how did you offend these people?" Liu Feifei hesitated, not knowing how to answer, and turned to look at her father Liu Huzhan at the door. Liu Huzhan then walked in timidly and said very embarrassedly, "I caused this. It has nothing to do with Feifei. I am the one who implicated Feifei." "Uncle, are you teacher Liu's father?" Lin Hao asked. In fact, when he used his X-ray vision to see Liu Feifei appear in this underground gambling den outside the hotel, he roughly guessed why she came here. It must be related to gambling. But he didn't quite believe that a quiet and beautiful teacher like Liu Feifei would be a gambler. She guessed that her relatives must have dragged her into this. However, when he saw Liu Feifei being abused by Shidingxiong, he didn't think too much and entered the underground gambling den as quickly as possible. Fortunately, he arrived in time. If he had arrived a few seconds later, Liu Feifei would have been raped by this beast. Liu Huzhan looked at Lin Hao and heard him call his daughter teacher. He thought Lin Hao was her student. However, he didn't look like a student, so he asked curiously, "Are you Feifei's colleague?" "No, I'm Mr. Liu's friend." Lin Hao said politely, and then asked, "Uncle, how did you offend these people? Do you owe them money?" Liu Huzhan nodded embarrassedly, pulled his sleeve, and whispered, "Young man, it's not convenient to talk here, let's go out first." "How much money is owed?" Lin Hao asked directly, and his attitude was very firm. This attitude seemed to tell everyone present that he had the ability to solve all problems, no matter how much money was owed. Including principal and interest, the total is more than 870,000 yuan. I originally only borrowed 430,000 yuan, but the interest has compounded to more than 800,000 yuan in the past 6 months. Liu Huzhan began to complain, "They are just like Ju Baopi, they want to peel off my skin." "Uncle, you and teacher Liu sit down first, I will take care of the rest." Lin Hao smiled knowingly, then walked towards Shidingxiong and stared at him sternly with a very sharp look. Seeing this look in his eyes, Shidingxiong couldn't help but be startled, but as their hall master, he didn't want to show cowardice in front of his subordinates, otherwise he would lose his prestige in front of them in the future. Shidingxiong straightened his chest and pretended to be calm, saying, "You heard it all. They owed me money. It is only natural to pay back a debt. I see that you are also a man of the underworld. You will not ignore the rules of the underworld, right?" "Of course we have to follow the rules." Lin Hao nodded affirmatively. "Then pay back the money. Since you want to stand up for them, you should pay it back," said Shidingxiong. "Of course the money has to be repaid." Lin Hao smiled easily, and then changed the subject, "But the repayment must also follow the rules. There are still rules for paying back the money." "What rules?" Shidingxiong looked at him strangely. Was this bastard going to cheat? If he really wanted to cheat, he really couldn't do anything about it, so he had to provoke him with words. "You keep saying that you have to follow the rules. A real man's word is his bond. Don't cheat. I'm just afraid that you'll cheat." Lin Hao glanced at him disdainfully and asked, "How did Uncle Liu owe you money?" Shidingxiong said, "He lost money in gambling and borrowed money from me. He borrowed money from me 7 times. I have the IOUs here, which are very clear. I also told him clearly in advance how the interest rate was calculated. We did not cheat him." Lin Hao smiled calmly and said, "Since it's a gambling debt, let's settle it at the gambling table." "Well, that's what you said." Shidingxiong was very confident. Even if he couldn't beat him, he would always win the bet. In this place, no one could beat him. He said confidently, "You can choose any bet you want. Don't say I'm bullying you. Don't deny your loss when you lose. Then we can use the popular Sohar game in the casino and decide the winner in 1 round." Lin Hao replied without thinking, showing his confidence. "Good." Shidingxiong readily agreed and told his younger brother to bring in the poker cards. There was a gambling table in the private room, and after a while the younger brother brought in the poker cards. According to the rules, the younger brother turned over a deck of cards, and with a wave of his hand, the cards appeared one by one, very neatly, and his movements were very skillful. Shidingxiong's eyes swept across the cards one by one, then he looked down at his sleeves and said, There's nothing wrong with the cards, what about you? Lin Hao just glanced at it and said indifferently, no problem. The younger brother raised his hand to cover the cards and was about to deal them, but Lin Hao raised his hand to interrupt him and said, I don't trust your people. To be fair, I'm going to find someone who doesn't know how to play cards to deal the cards. It's up to you, you can pick anyone here. Shiding Xiong was also very straightforward, because no matter who dealt the cards, he was sure to win. Lin Hao looked at Liu Feifei and said, Teacher Liu, you deal the cards. I? Liu Feifei was stunned and said nervously, I don't know how to do it. The people at the door were also looking at Liu Feifei. Judging from her appearance, she probably had never even touched the cards.